our appreciation somewhat to the finish line, but no one video or words that we could say can really express how much you've contributed to our community. So thank you for meeting, and we hope that you're around another 80 plus years and keep on going.
Right.
All right. Okay, so our last presentation is because July 2020 is our Parks Month, and parks make life better. And it's established through statewide public opinion research that 98% of California households go to a local park at least once a year. 2 in 3 households, 2/3 of all households, visit a park once a month, and 50% of us participate in organized recreation programs. And most park use is with family and with friends.
Mr. Mayor, this is Tina. We have a video also for that.
For the parks, would you? Okay. Do you have a video you'd like to show before I continue reading, or you would like to show?
Yes, because you're going to be repeating what's on the video, sir.
Okay. Can you erase what I already said? Ladies and gentlemen, here is another video by our esteemed Chief of Police, Tina Nieto.
Hello, my name is Chris Bailey, and I'm working for Public Works City of Marina.
Hi, I'm Catherine Meacham, and I work for the City of Marina Recreation Department.
July 2020 is Parks Make Life Better Month, whereas park and recreation makes lives and communities better now and in the future. Whereas it is established through statewide public opinion research, 98% of California households visit a local park at least once a year. 2 in 3 households visit a park once a month. 50% of households participate in an organized recreational program, and most park use is with family and friends.
Whereas residents value recreation as it provides positive alternatives for children and youth to reduce crime and mischief, especially during non-school hours. It promotes the arts, it increases social connections, aids in therapy, promotes lifelong learning, and whereas residents value their parks for assist in outdoor space for children and adults to play, to be active, exercise, and group sports, and
whereas parks provide access to the serenity and the inspiration of nature and outdoor spaces, as well as preserve and protect the historic, natural, and cultural resources in our community. And whereas the residents of Marina, including children, youth, families, adults, seniors, businesses, community organizations, and visitors benefit from the wide range of parks, trails, open space, sports, fields, tennis courts, facilities, and programs including city-supported senior, teen, sports, and youth programs. Gloria Jean Tate Park, Windy Hill Park, Preston Park, DiMaggio Park, Loch Padden Park, part of the county park system, Marina Beach State Park, the Equestrian Center, and Water City, along with our bike and trail systems provided by and or within the city limits of the City of Marina. And
whereas the City of Marina urges all of its residents to recognize that parks and recreation enriches the lives of its residents and visitors, as well as adding value to the community, homes, and neighborhoods. And whereas July is celebrated across the nation as Parks and Recreation Month,
now therefore be it resolved, I, Bruce Delgado, Mayor of Marina, California, do hereby proclaim July 2020 as Parks Make Life's Better Month, and in doing so urges all its citizens to use and enjoy its parks, trails, open space, facilities, and recreational opportunities. Approved this 7th day of July 2020, signed Mayor Bruce C. Delgado, Mayor. The end.
All you residents out there, come join us in our parks and our trails and enjoy it. Thank you.
Right. Oh, that was a great video, Tina. Chief of Police Tina Nieto, thank you, and anyone that had a role in that. Of course, all of your actors were real life players in those photos. Say it all. There is so much going on in the city, and not everybody is aware of how much effort and success we have with children of the hundreds on a daily basis before COVID. But we've depended on people for a long time. Terry, our director of cultural, recreation cultural services department, Ron Powell, Kathy Meacham, Laura Johansson, they're the ones that motivate all the people to participate, all the children and all their parents. And then the public works crew are the ones who maintain all of those parks and our roads and our buildings, city buildings. So that teamwork between our public works and our recreation is a long-lasting demonstration, because these people have been here for a long time and they continue to give to our children every day that they can. And those pictures really said it all. So thank you, Tina, for showing us those photos, and thanks to everyone who's deserving of accolades for making our parks contribute to a better life for us than we'd have without them. All right. Well, if we have any recreation announcements, Terry Segrist would continue, and we'll move into those before public comment.
Yes, we do, Mr. Mayor, and the public. Let's go ahead, Matt, and we'll bring those up. So a continuation of our food distribution program. Want to make sure that our citizens know that we're there 7 days a week, getting food out to the community. Today was Senior Food Day. We did about 425 today. So that's the food distribution. Moving on. Grab and Go. This is the school district's food distribution, Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. to noon. The two schools that are represented for our food distribution locally are at Marina Vista and Los Arbos. Starting on July 14th is our gentle yoga for our seniors on Zoom. So this is our first attempt to virtualize our seniors and bring them into the 21st century with gentle yoga. And we're going to round 2, summer season round 2 of our Junior Giants program. It is a free program. We're taking signups now, and the first pitch meeting will be in about 5 days. So we're getting ready for round 2 of Junior Giants virtual. Our PAL, Police Activities League Half Marathon Youth Fitness Challenge, is ongoing. This will continue through the end of this month. And we're encouraging all of our young people to take advantage of that. And there'll be a t-shirt and prizes at the end if you can complete your half mile through the summer. Our virtual sports camps, stay at home, video drills for kids. We have 6 disciplines. We have soccer, basketball, football, baseball, martial arts, and volleyball. And these are all virtual programs to keep us motivated during COVID, to keep some sport camps on the radar. Our virtual recreation program is online. We have virtual camps. We've got health and fitness. It includes education and art, and much, much more. So take advantage of our virtual recreation website during COVID. The library is doing a great program, Wednesdays at 11, Thursdays at 2, now through July 23rd, Yoga with Holly. We have science tellers, music, magicians. It's a great program in cooperation with the Marina Library. Spanish version. Next slide. Are we good? And those are your recreation announcements for this evening, Mr. Mayor, and the public and council members. Thank you. You're muted, Bruce.
Thank you, Terry, for that, and for your team member, the wizard behind the scene that's helping you with that presentation. And Terry, you quickly mentioned the number 425 for today's food distribution, which happens every Tuesday, and that's for seniors only. Does 425 mean how many cars came through?
That's the cars.
Okay, so there's 425 cars that were lined up over probably 6 or so city blocks to get food distributions, as they've been doing every Tuesday for seniors only from 2 until 4 p.m. So it's just, I know you're used to it. We're kind of all used to it who've been involved with there, but every day that you give out 425 boxes of food for a week to people who need them is an incredible gift to our community that needs it so badly. So I just didn't want to let that go, Terry, because it's a big deal, even though you do it on a regular basis. Thank you to all the volunteers that help you, Terry, and all the staff and Monterey County Food Bank, et cetera. It's a team effort that helps everybody. Okay, so now we'll go to public comments. Everybody has up to 4 minutes about things that are on your mind that are not on tonight's agenda later on. For those issues, we'll wait until each issue comes up and everyone will have a chance to comment at that time. So first we're going to go to Amber Reed, and then Frank Coda, Doug Murphy, and then we have some other folks that are queued up. Thank you everybody for joining us. Go ahead, Amber, and good evening to you.
Good evening, and thank you for giving us the time to present our project to you, and for the invitation to come and share what we've been working on. Again, I'm Amber Reed. I'm with Starbucks, and we have emailed in today 3 PDFs that are available to share. I don't have visibility right now as to whether or not those were received or they're up on anybody's screens. But and there's 3 of us actually who are here to speak together if that's possible. Frank Coda is our architect working on the project of the current Burger King at Reservation in Del Monte. And Doug Murphy, also with Starbucks, is in the meeting with us to help us present.
Hello.
So you each have 4 minutes, Amber.
Am I able to cede time over to Frank for him to walk through the PDFs?
Well, if we can stop the clock here, Anita Shepard Sharp.
Thank you.
Council, what I'm hearing, Council, is we have 3 speakers who would like to share 12 minutes. We don't normally do this. Bob Rathie, our city attorney, can we do this, or should we stick to 4 minutes per person?
My advice is to stick to a maximum of 4 minutes per person.
Okay.
Not create a presentation format.
Okay. So Amber, let's do the best we can.
Yep. I will take just another quick minute.
You have 2 minutes. You have almost 3 minutes to go, Amber.
I know.
With your time.
I don't think I'm going to need it, but thank
Okay.
you. As we have shared with you, Mayor Delgado, we are working on the existing Burger King drive-through building on the corner of Reservation and Del Monte. This is a proposed relocation for us of our existing cafe that is right next door. As a little bit of background, we opened that cafe in 2003, so we've been really proud to be a member of the Marina community for 17 years. We opened our second store in the new development over in the Dunes in 2017. And also in 2017, we started working on finding a relocation for the existing cafe. And we identified a site that was out closer to Highway 1. There was a developer working to purchase that and build a new building for us. And pending some feedback and the city's upcoming downtown plan, we sidelined that project and kind of regrouped to find an existing drive-through building, and so not to be adding to a new drive-through development in your community, which is when we started working roughly on this new Burger King conversion for us. And so when I cede over to Frank in just a moment, he can share with you and walk through what our process has been so far with our submittals to planning, our review with planning, and the modifications we've made to that existing site plan to improve for the city, basically curb cuts and ingress egress into the parcel, so we can limit any potential queuing out towards the street or outside of our own drive-through lane. and also show the improvements we're planning to make to the existing building and the general common area of the parcel. And with that, if we can give time to Frank.
Thank you, Amber, and good evening, Frank.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council. Again, my name is Frank Cota. I'm a principal at the firm of Greenberg Faro, and I have to say I've presented many times at the podium, but this is a first for me. So thank you for dealing with this. I'm just going to give a brief project overview. The existing square footage of the building is 1,920 square feet. It was originally approved in 1978 through a use permit and a variance for one parking space. Originally as a Del Taco, and we actually did the construction documents, submitted them into the city, and then the issue of our use came up, whether it was a change of use or not, and we're happy to go through whatever we need to do. But we did meet with staff planning. Christine, I met with her, and actually there were a couple others in the room. And Christy, I'm sorry. And from a technical standpoint, I think we accomplished the increasing the queue length. We restricted the driveway onto reservation to a right out only again, one of the main concerns was traffic backing up onto the streets. I think the right out was a good solution for that. Actually, the Del Monte driveway, if you've been to that Burger King, it's at a weird angle. That was another concern. So we straightened that all out. So from a purely technical standpoint, I think we can address as what I believe would work for the project. And then there's the what I call the emotional issue of the use and the drive-through in that location. And I think what we wanted to do, and Doug's going to speak to this in a little bit, but basically we're here before the council. We know that there's the revitalization planning area for downtown, and we just want to make as best we could as we move forward. We didn't want to end up spending a lot of time and effort and money and to find out that a drive-through is not going to be permitted in this location. So I think that's actually why we're before you tonight, rather than just filing with planning what they've asked us to file for, a new CUP. And with that, that's really the overview and kind of our main question of the day. I'm good then.
All right, thank you very much, Frank. We'll move to Doug Murphy. Good evening, Doug.
Hey, yes, good evening. Thank you for having us all here. We appreciate you, including us in the tonight's presentation. I guess just kind of wrap things up. I was going to speak about what we were planning to do, but I think we've already, covered quite a bit of that. Our existing store, we were looking to move to the Burger King next door and really improve our ability to serve our customers. I think, to Frank's point, we're just trying to get out in front of how the city would like us to approach this. So I get that. That's all.
All right, Doug. Well, thank you, because at one time now the whole council knows there's something in the works at that location, and it's great for the public to hear a little bit about what it looks like behind the scenes. But in this case, you brought it to a transparent place where we can all know what the status is from your perspective, and we appreciate all three of you for joining us tonight. All right, let's go then to Carissa Mann.
Hey.
Good evening.
Hey. So I wrote a statement that might take me too long, so we'll see how far I get. So hi, none of what I have to say is actually on the agenda, so I'm kind of just here to be a squeaky wheel. So here are some things that I wrote down. I just want to encourage us to continue looking at our police department policy and see where policy change can be made, and compare our policy to that of Colorado's SB 2217, because it tackles huge issues like qualified immunity and the prevention of rehiring of bad officers. I also think we need to look more deeply at our de-escalation techniques here locally. because use of a taser was mentioned as one of those techniques. I think it would be beneficial if we could keep at least one topic on the agenda regarding racial justice right now, so that we don't lose steam on these issues. I also wanted to say that we need to continue discussing and hopefully create a citizen review board that oversees all the departments in the city. And we can't just use budget as an excuse not to move forward with this. We can figure that out. It can be volunteer positions, I believe. Shoot, I lost my spot.
Okay, you're doing great.
This makes me so not credible. Okay, let's see. I was thinking that what we could do is assign a city council member or the city manager along with Police Chief Nieto to research how to establish a program like Cahoots or Portland Street Response. We could start a pilot program with just one unit where the police are present but not actively involved unless the responders request their help. I sent you all an email on the 23rd of June, and it included an attachment to an article explaining Portland Street Response. And at the end, there's a really easy to watch video. And so I also sent that today, just my comments, including the link again. We could use the Cahoots program of Oregon as an example. They have been operating as a mobile crisis intervention program in Eugene since 1989. They respond in teams of 2 with a medic and a trained crisis worker. Last year, they handled 20% of 911 calls. And NPR reported that despite taking on 20% of all the police calls, they only needed to include the police in about 150 of those calls, and that was about 22,000 calls. I also put a link to the Cahoots program. Let's see, what we need is an individual or team to research whether there is a functioning program similar to these in Monterey County already that our city could work with to expand their services to include Marina. And if not, we need to find out the exact cost to employ these individuals as a 24-hour service, cost of their vehicle, communication devices, whatever they need. How much time do I have left?
50 seconds.
Okay. I wanted to ask Lisa, I don't know if she's allowed to answer me directly, but in this format, but I wanted to find out if she had reached out to Vanessa Littleton, who's a local public administration expert. She's an associate professor at CSUMB and the head of the Human Services and Public Policy Department. She is offering to take the lead on the bias research that we have discussed doing. She's a local resident. She happens to be African American, and she has studied racial justice issues in the past during her career. I sent a whole bio of her. And I think I'm probably out of time, so.
You have 8 seconds left, enough to say.
Thank you.
All right, Carissa, thank you. And we'll answer all the questions, such as yours, as soon as public comment is over. So thank you for joining us and keeping us attuned to your thoughts. Okay, Danielle Burchett.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yes, good evening, Danielle.
Good evening. As Bruce said, my name is Danielle Burchett. I've seen a great number of community-focused efforts come from our city's leadership, and I just want to thank you for your hard work. Some of the recent efforts have focused on important things related to social justice, equity, and our values as a city. I'm heartened by the effort to reinstall the Martin Luther King Jr. statue as quickly as possible, and I hope the Recreation and Cultural Services Commission will work to recruit as well as compensate a diverse ad hoc committee to ensure that reinstallation will proceed with care and input from our community, with special attention to amplifying traditionally oppressed voices. The statue is a symbolic effort to be applauded, but we shouldn't stop there. This moment offers momentum to make concrete changes, big and small, for the betterment of our community and all of its citizens. It's not enough to say, compared to other places, Marina is doing a pretty good job with racial issues. Just like any place, Marina has opportunities to prioritize our commitment to the physical and psychological safety and well-being of our citizens. We already do some great things. We no longer have community service officers in our schools, which research shows reduces the risk of students entering the school to prison pipeline. Our law enforcement officers are already using body cameras when interacting with the public. These decisions should be applauded, and simultaneously, we should be looking for ways to push forward and do more. In selecting a bias consultant, we should be mindful of opportunities to work with people who understand our local community, and we should work to ensure the scope of that work is valuable to Marina in order to set priorities for real change. As Carissa mentioned, it would be wise to consider professionals at our local universities, such as CSUMB's Dr. Vanessa Lopez Littleton, for this work. We can also look for opportunities to revise our police policies and manual. The 8 Can't Wait campaign calls for immediate adoption of 8 policies, much of which will be mandated by Senate Bill 230, but many experts say these 8 policies aren't sufficient for real impact. Thus, I respectfully ask that City Council and the Chief of Police consider thinking even bigger in upcoming priorities. For example, is there room for improvement in the recruitment and psychological evaluation of police officers hired and retained locally? Are there comprehensive procedures and valid psychological tools being used according to the California Post Peace Officer Psychological Screening Manual? How thoroughly do we examine why officers applying for positions may have left a previous position? Is there room for increased training of officers related to mental health, adolescent behavior, adolescent development, and cultural competency? Further, what's within our local power to decertify police officers with excessive force violations? What's within our power in regards to limiting qualified immunity? What can be improved in terms of collection, review, and reporting of demographic data across police encounters to address disparities? What benefits might there be to establishing a citizen oversight committee? As discussed in Councilmember Berkeley's recent NACOL presentation, a variety of oversight models exist that can help strengthen relationships between police and public. Additionally, there's opportunity to either reallocate funds or raise new funds to increase our support of social services operations for mental health, supporting unhoused individuals, and building affordable housing. I know we're much smaller than Denver, but the change coming out of Denver is worth looking at. Their Caring for Denver Foundation has a $35 million annual budget focused on funding social services projects funded by taxing 25 cents out of every dollar in sales. Scaling that down, Marina could provide increased support of social services initiatives, either alone or in collaboration with neighboring communities. I guess I will stop there. Thank you so much for this opportunity.
Thank you very much, Danielle, for joining us tonight. All right, we'll move to Michael Owen.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Good evening, Michael. Yes.
Okay, great. I want to thank Long Lane, our city manager, for immediately responding to my email yesterday concerning some excavations on Beach Road for a water line. And he also encouraged Brian McMinn from Public Works to respond back, which he did. And it also encouraged, I sent an email to Tom Moore as president of the Marina Coast Water District to also encourage his senior engineer, Donald Wilcox, to contact me this afternoon. And we met on Beach Road at 2 o'clock for 35 minutes with Margaret Davis, who's also a Beach Road resident, to go over the plans, which includes some significant, very immediate deadlines. So a week from now, 14 July, Monterey Peninsula Engineering will do hand potholing along that whole stretch of Monterey of Beach Road, just about 10 feet or 11 feet or so from the trunks of the landmark trees along that whole line. That's to determine the extent of the root system extending to their expected trench, which will be 6 feet down. And during that hand potholing, they will avoid root systems that are 2 inches or more. But in that report, which the arborist will be making on Wednesday, which he will be sending to Monterey Coast Water District to review at their meeting on the 20th on Monday, and then also hopefully providing a copy to Marina staff, which will be included in a packet for Marina City Council on Tuesday, the 21st of July. All of this allows no time for public input, for questions. I can't ask the details of the arborist report, like how many inch roots are larger, did you actually find along that whole stretch? Like, does that not compromise or like put into question the stability of the root system of those eucalyptus, which is the most significant urban forestry canopy in Marina and has special protections as landmark, which I think scheduling this for an encroachment permit to be granted by City Council on Tuesday, the 21st of July, is just something that the council is not, well, able to process all the information about whether this is going to compromise that line of landmark trees or not. So I really hope if you issue an encroachment permit, I mean, that gives them no reason to seek a tree removal permit because of damage. It doesn't have to be removal, but damage to the trees. So I'm really hoping that the council considers giving this some time for public input, for staff review, for the consideration that this landmark row of trees requires. Thank you.
Thank you very much for checking all that out and reaching out to the appropriate places, Mike. We're definitely with you on that. Okay, we'll go to Lisbeth Vischer. Good evening, Lisbeth.
Yes, good evening, Mr. Mayor and City Council members. This is Lisbeth Visser.
Hi.
As you all know, Marina's water is in jeopardy of being stolen by Calam, a private for-profit company that delivers water to our neighbors on the peninsula. Citizens for Just Water is a group of residents who are fighting to stop Calam from building a desalination project on Marina's beach. The proposed slant wells will take most of their water not from the bay, but from the aquifers below our city. This groundwater is the only water source for Marina and the Oord communities. There is a good alternative. Expansion of the Pure Water Monterey recycled water project could provide enough water for the entire area for decades without causing harm to sensitive habitats like that of the western snowy plovers. On Thursday, September 17, the California Coastal Commission will have a special meeting to decide whether to approve Calam's project or not. This date replaces the previously scheduled August meeting date. We ask everyone to visit www.citizensforjustwater.org to get informed about the threat to our drinking water. Please click on sign up for updates to be added to the email list. And soon we will distribute a window sign with the snowy plover and the words Stop Calam. We ask everyone to print this 8.5 by 11 mini poster and to display it in their windows. Then take a photo of yourself and your household members in front of the poster and email it to us. The photos will be used to show the Coastal Commission that Marina's residents are requesting to deny Calam's proposed slant wells. Please give us a little time to update the window sign with the new meeting date of September 17 before you download and print. And please remember to sign up for the updates on citizensforjustwater.org so that you can be contacted by email when the new window sign is ready. And as always, thank you all for offering time to let members of the public speak and for the many hours that all of you volunteer for our city. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lisbeth, for your leadership and contributions. We're going to go to Brian McCarthy and then Nancy Amadeo and then LX. Go ahead, Brian.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Members of the council. First, through the council, I just want to express my appreciation for Mr. Owen's comments on the trees. If you know Mike, you know he really is the Lorax of Marina. And if you're familiar with Dr. Seuss, I would say, quote Dr. Seuss and say, he speaks for the trees have no tongues. And he is asking you, sir, at the top of his lungs, oh, please do not cut down another one. But what I really want to speak to you about tonight is the parks proclamation that we heard earlier. I really enjoyed listening to that proclamation. We've got great parks here in Marina, and we have even greater ones coming. But I want to remind the council of something that happened a year or two ago when a resident who happens to now sit on the dais with you tonight brought in a huge mason jar full of cigarette butts from one of our small neighborhood parks. Marina is behind some of the other cities, and in fact, even the county, in setting legislation that would prohibit smoking in our parks. Marina has been relatively silent on regulating smoking and vaping in some public settings, such as parks and shopping areas. This is not to be confused with affirming the voters' desire to legalize cannabis use. It's a very similar and parallel issue, but has very different moving parts. Pacific Grove recently, last year, banned smoking in multi-unit housing complexes, such as apartment complexes, in order to protect non-smoking residents and children. They also banned flavored tobacco and e-cigarettes that were thought to target young people. Governor Gavin Newsom recently banned smoking on all state beaches, including our Marina State Beach, and state parks to protect not only the natural environment, but also the health and safety of its visitors. So as we think about how to make our parks truly top-notch, how to ensure our residents are healthy and not unnecessarily exposed to the secondhand smoke that they do not want to be, I hope we will discuss enacting legislation soon, and also that we will try to enforce any crafted legislation that may be enacted. So thanks for listening, and I really look forward to having that discussion soon. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Brian. Nancy Amadeo?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Good evening.
Good evening. This is kind of a difficult one for me. I was very impressed last meeting when the council voted unanimously to support going forward with the MLK sculpture placement and refurbishment. It was an important decision. It was the right decision. And this time it occurred at the right time when it had broad public support. It had donations from the public. It told the council, this is what we want. There was a great article in the Weekly on Thursday about what happened and that this project was moving forward. I appreciated that article. I appreciated the photograph of the sculpture. However, I was deeply offended by the other photograph, which showed the mayor sitting on the pedestal that once held the sculpture of Dr. Martin Luther King. To me, it was incredibly inappropriate and disrespectful. Now, I don't know if that was suggested to him by the photographer, or if this was something he chose to do. If he chose to do it, it shows lack of understanding of what respect for Dr. Martin Luther King really means. He was a great leader, an inspirational leader. When he was assassinated, I was 16 years old. I went to a heavily integrated school up in San Jose, and we all cried. We all cried. It was devastating. And to see someone sit on a pedestal that was put there to honor that great man so offended me. I can't tell you how badly I felt. And yes, how angry I was. Mr. Mayor, I hope it was suggested, but when you're offered that kind of opportunity, I would highly suggest that you say no, because you're not Dr. King. You don't have the right to sit on the pedestal. That is given to someone after they have passed, when their great deeds have been shown over decades to have been exceptional. Respect is demanded. And unfortunately, in this instance, you failed. Had you shown the respect of standing next to that pedestal, honoring the place where his sculpture once sat, I would have felt completely different. I would have said, this man understands. But I didn't feel that way. I don't feel that way. And I would hope that you would send something into the Weekly that said, I did not know there could be that kind of reaction, because quite frankly, every person I've talked to had the same reaction that I did. And I am hoping and praying that that wasn't what you intended, and that you would use better judgment in the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nancy. We'll go to LX. Good evening, LX. Try to unmute on your end, Alex.
Okay, I think I got it. Did I get it?
Yes, we hear you. Hello, and thanks for joining
Thank you so much. Oh, I'm so happy to finally make it. Hi, everybody out there. Hope you're all doing well, staying healthy. I've been here since 2004. I've been a resident. I am so grateful and so thankful to our whole community, everyone who volunteers to make it a better place, to the mayor, to the city council, to all the commissioners that give their time to better our city and help us all go in a good direction, moving forward. And so I wanted to start there, but I wanted to remind everybody that I filmed the Wind Festival, Easter egg hunts, Labor Day parades, first night, the skate park and all the events there. The 50th anniversary at the American Legion, which my band played. We had our mayor danced. Terry Segrist was out there boogieing. Others were involved. I was there when the bridge went down. I was there all night long. I filmed the whole thing. Yeah, I think it was called the Color Run. I don't remember, when we all got splattered with all that different colored paints. And that was our initiation to our city manager. He was just in all kinds of different colors. We had a great time out there, just great events. And that I was part of, and I filmed it. Now, I think there's so many great things coming up. And I think, who's going to film it? Oh, by the way, the chief did a great job on her presentation. That was great. But I submitted a proposal to the city council to consider hiring me and my business, Digital Diaries, to continue to capture the great things that go on in our city. The food dispensary with the Emersons, how many people really know about that? I think that should be on video somewhere to see. The peaceful protests. Do we have video of that? Do we, other things such as interviews with our chief of police and the BLM movement, how we're moving forward and for safety and confidence in from our city, from the community to know that we're moving in the right direction. Updates on the development of our cities, actual visual updates, this kind of thing. So I'm hoping that the city council will consider looking at my proposal and consider to hire me. Yes, having volunteers do things is great, and I would even work with that volunteer group who would be out shooting things, and I would help direct them how to edit and this kind of thing, but I would oversee that. We also have this great media called Marina Channel 25, which is really being underutilized and mismanaged. And since I kind of know about that, I could help to consult on how to best utilize that media. So again, thank you for the time. I hope you'll consider this. And if there's any questions, if anybody needs to get a hold of me about anything, all my information is there on the proposal that I put forth. And with all the lack of restaurants around, I heard that Mars is opening a new restaurant, and they have great food, but no atmosphere.
Great punchline to a serious, helpful concept. Thank you very much, Alex. All right, Denise Turley, and then Paula Pillow.
Hi.
Hi, good evening.
Good evening. I just would like to make a couple of comments along with that article in the weekly. They incorrectly listed Frank as the mayor pro tem, and I found the article a little suspicious in the fact that they hadn't done their due diligence to actually check to see that that was correct. So that's that comment. The other comment is about fireworks. It was more miserable this year than previous years. It is all, and fur babies hate it, but I will tell you that the disabled and seniors are also terrified for it, especially the one that I was staying with on 4th of July, who is bedbound paralyzed, could smell the smoke and hear the banging and realize that if her building started on fire, the fire department would not get there soon enough and be able to rescue her out of the bed because transferring her takes several minutes. I would just like to make the comment that there could be an alternative venue, like a light show or something else that could be substituted instead of the fireworks in the marina. I don't know. I just don't think that the fireworks are worth terrifying some of our most vulnerable citizens, letting them have to listen to it. Not only it was terrible on the 4th, but of course it didn't start on the 4th, nor did it stop on the 4th. And I will tell you that the location that we are at is less than 2 blocks from the police station and the fire station. So I'm sure they could see where those fireworks were being shot up in the air. Not like they didn't probably have hundreds of other calls on that same thing. It's a waste of city time and money also to chase after people that simply know better. Please don't do it anymore. Don't terrify our citizens, our fur babies, and all of those that can't stand loud noise. Bruce, thank you for my time to comment.
Thank you very much for joining us, Denise. We'll go to Paula Pillow. Good evening, Paula.
Good evening, Bruce. I had something I wanted to say this evening, but first I want to thank Denise for her comments about the fireworks, and also Carissa Mann and Danielle, I believe her name is Burkett. I hope that they continue to attend the meetings, the series that we're holding, and I'm sure Councilmember Berkeley will have something more to say about that at the end here. So this is what I plan to talk about, but hearing some other comments, I want to make another one. I'll try to get all of this in. So at the national level, we've been witnessing, to put it politely, gross incivility that is key to a narcissistic political strategy, a strategy that places politics above the health of the community. And it does that by galvanizing the negative, emotionally charged position of the concept of otherism, that there's us and then there's them. And it goads people with how bad and threatening the other side is. So at a time when we should be unifying for the common interest, common values, and common good, as Dr. King exampled to us, too often council members are mislabeled, mischaracterized, and demonized for political purposes. And so our community should be more responsible and concerned with the truth and less concerned about political maneuvers. I did want to comment on what former council member Nancy Amadeo said. I was kind of taken aback by that, the photograph in the article as well. And Bruce, you know that I supported you from your very first election here in Marina and all the way through to your bid for mayor, and continue to support you for several successive things. But when I saw that picture with the small inset of the MLK sculpture and this gigantic picture of you, you know, literally sitting and putting yourself atop a pedestal, I have to say that is insensitive at best and narcissistic at worst. And it just seemed exploitive of the memory of Dr. King. Now, after what I just said at the beginning of this, I'm not here to demonize you or mischaracterize you, but I just ask that you please be mindful and more sensitive of this kind of thing going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Paula. Thanks for joining us tonight and for your comments. Anyone else from the public wishing to speak tonight? Okay, we're going to go to
Mr. Mayor, this is Chief Nieto. I put my hand up. I know I'm not the public, but I did want to address something that's not on the.
Gina, we do have one more.
All right,
okay, yeah,
I'll mute myself.
Definitely, I've been. No, you're fine. I've seen your hand, and we're going to get to it. We're going to go to Margaret first as public comment. Okay, Margaret.
Thank you, Mr.
You're muted.
Can you hear me?
I'm trying to unmute you. Yes. Good evening, Margaret.
I would like to talk about the MLK issue. Last week, there was an outrageous attack on Council member Gail Morton because she advocated that the council should give careful thought and creative consideration to the restoration of the Martin Luther King Jr. statue instead of rushing forward without a plan. For those who haven't been following this, the council was voting on spending $10,000 to bring the Martin Luther King Jr. statue out of mothballs and erect it somewhere in the city. Councilmember Morton wholeheartedly agreed that the statue should be restored to a place of honor. Bearing in mind that the city was facing tough budget realities, she suggested that the public be offered a chance to step up and contribute through private donations. And in fact, by the next council meeting a week later, $20,000 had been raised, much of it by Paula Pelot's group. At the council meeting the subsequent week, Morton made the notion that the project go forward and praised the public for getting involved. Nevertheless, in public comment, she was blasted by some individuals as a racist and a horrible, horrible person. I want to make 4 points. Up until 2 weeks ago, Councilmember Morton didn't know the statue existed, but Mayor Delgado has known for the 12 years he's been mayor and did nothing about it in all those years. Should we call the mayor a racist? Second, let's not be so eager to cancel people we don't even know. It so happens that Gail Morton served as a board member of the Martin Luther King Jr. Foundation in Santa Clara County. For 10 years, she was the main organizer of the annual Freedom Train that ran from San Jose to downtown San Francisco on the holiday. This was a special Cal train with 15 cars full of dignitaries and the public celebrating the legacy of Dr. King. The train stopped at every depot for speeches and commemorative events involving hundreds of people of all ages and backgrounds. Once it got to San Francisco, people marched up Market Street where there were more public speeches and events. That's a lot of planning and organization. That's how much Gail Morton has personally invested in Martin Luther King Jr.'s legacy. Third, let's not forget that Dr. King was an ordained Baptist minister who preached the gospel of Jesus Christ. Again and again, he talked about the power of love. You may know this quote: "Darkness cannot drive out darkness, only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate, only love can do that." And I have decided to stick with love. Hate is too great a burden to bear. Finally, as we honor Dr. King, I call upon the mayor to lead the way in challenging all residents of the city to acknowledge what is good in others, to show tolerance and understanding to our neighbors, and to take to heart the deep spiritual message that the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. expressed. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Margaret, for those comments and joining us tonight. All right, let's go to Greg Fury. Good evening, Greg.
Good evening. I had a number of things I was going to say, but I do not want to risk being a bore, and I do not think I would be as articulate as some others. I did want to give a shout out to Brian McMinn, to Chief Nieto, and to Council Member O'Connell for bringing a real traffic concern issue for the neighborhood that surrounds Bayer Street and Reservation Road. A lot of people had stopped using the turn onto Reservation Road because of the obstructed vision looking westward along Reservation. I think I calculated you had 1.2 seconds to make a safe turn, or to decide whether to make a safe turn during rush hour, because from Linscott, from about 3:30 till 6 o'clock, traffic very often speeds up to 65 miles an hour by the time it hits Bayer, because people are rushing to get home and they see an end to buildings. Anyway, this started in January, it went to traffic committee, and eventually the curb got painted red, and it eliminated a lot of unsafe parking that has once again allowed people to use Reservation Road coming out of Bayer when they want to go down into town. So I want to thank the people involved, and especially to Brian for following up on it. It took a couple of tries, but they got it right. I also wanted to encourage our city to try and collaborate with the other cities on the peninsula to put out a public fireworks show. I know that there have been fireworks shows in the past that were canceled for budgetary reasons, and this may be the absolute wrong time to even seek something like that. Maybe by private donations, but I'm amazed as a former fire service professional that there were not wildfires that were started, especially in the area of Preston Park and in those brushy areas around Fort Ord. It was the most impressive display, I guess you could say, of illegal fireworks I've seen since I've lived in Marina for 20 years. And I'm not sure what the best way to dilute that enthusiasm is, but I would think that a good public display would go a long way towards maybe collaborating people's interest. On the other hand, it's a growth profit opportunity if communities seek to find people, because it was a target-rich environment this year. But I think I'm sure everyone's followed the debate on Nextdoor. Anyway, I won't comment on it further other than I would hope that there be some ability for the communities to collaborate to put on a great fireworks display. I'm going to hold any further comment. Bruce, I heard from a lot of friends regarding that picture, and people were, I guess, gobsmacked. And I'll just leave it at that. I could make a lot more commentary, but I don't think it showed particularly good judgment. I thought it was disrespectful, and I don't want to pile on, but I'll leave it at that. And I thank all of you for all of the time and effort you put into this community. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Greg, for those comments. Thank you for joining us. Okay, anyone else would like to speak during public comment before we go to council members for their comment? All right, thank you everybody who has commented. We'll answer the questions first, and then I'll make an attempt later on to get to comments. But our process is to answer questions. Lisa asked, I'm so sorry. Danielle, I think, asked whether Vanessa Littleton from CSUMB has been contacted for her potential contributions to our bias and racism study that we may be doing here in the city of Marina. And she wanted to know if Lisa had contacted Vanessa. Councilmember Berkeley, did you want to respond to that?
Sure, I'm happy to. There were a few things that were brought up. That I was asked about. Should I go ahead and just go through them all, or do you want to go by the order that you have?
Well, I think we're trying to be more careful than I have been in the past to respond to questions at this time. And the question that I wrote down was, had you contacted Vanessa Littleton? But if there are other questions that you heard that you want to respond to in that vein, that'd be great too.
Sure. So I have not directly contacted her as of yet. I am just catching up on a whole series of emails, which I hope to finish up by tomorrow morning. So I will be reaching out to her tomorrow morning. So that's to follow up on that. There were some other questions, though, about the citizens oversight work that we've been doing. And if you could please share my screen or give me permission to share my screen, I would like to put some information to answer some of these questions.
So Lisa, I didn't hear those questions as in question format. And this usually isn't the time that we go into sort of presentations back and forth. And I know this wouldn't be a back and forth, but
okay, we can do it because I know we'll have council members. So let me just say that I will continue to address, Carissa, some of your questions and comments when council members give our comments. So
right, and you'll have two options, two times to do that. One is next when we're done after Tina speaks, and then one is under number 12 of this agenda. So you have something soon, and then you have something at the end, and both are opportunities for that sort of comment.
Excellent. Fully aware of our process. Thank you for the reminder, though. Great.
Thank you. All right. Did anyone else note any questions that I missed? Because I only had one from Lisa. Okay. Let's go then to Chief Nieto and then to the City Council for time for comments on items not on the agenda. Go ahead, Chief.
Good evening, everybody. I just wanted to make the council aware of a situation that happened the other night with my police officers. Last Thursday night around 9 p.m., the Marina PD received a report from an anonymous reporting party stating there was an intoxicated black male adult in his early 20s, short curly hair, unknown clothing, and a four-door white sedan, unknown plate, et cetera, that kept honking and yelling at an unknown person. The reporting party said they left, but stated there was a passenger in the vehicle and someone had overheard something about a knife, but they wouldn't elaborate. They added that the subject had fallen earlier in the bushes before getting to the car. The male kept saying, "I'm so drunk." The anonymous reporting party also said they saw him drink a beer in public. This was supposedly occurring at the Dunes Shopping Center near Blaze Pizza on Stillwell Drive. You know, upon my officer's arrival, they did locate a vehicle matching the description at the location described by the caller. Contact was made with the vehicle, and immediately a female adult jumped out of the car and the conversation started, "Why are you harassing me?" The contact ended fairly quickly since it was determined that the person wasn't involved. While this happened, there were multiple people who came out of the businesses and started videotaping the officers with their cellular phone, including some people hiding in the bushes videotaping the officers. This may be coincidental, but the officers and I believe this was an attempt to bait them into some type of negative contact. The officers never did locate a victim as described by the anonymous caller. A few minutes later, my officers observed the same group of people in vehicles in a nearby parking lot all together. These were the same people that had been challenging the police and videotaping the incident from earlier. We believe that most of the group actually were not from the community nor the peninsula based on vehicle registrations. As a department understand that we are a focal point for the BLM movement. Ours is a public profession. Our duties occur in a societal arena, allowing us very little privacy, if not no privacy. We often are surrounded by cameras and amateur reporters who broadcast every action and their opinion of it to a worldwide audience. We get that. To our community, law enforcement can be fascinating and contentious. It involves drama, intrigue, tragedy, and excitement for some that society finds captivating. It's pretty obvious that the incident I described was an attempt at what is known as cop baiting, an attempt to attack the credibility of the Marina Police Department. Personal credibility is essential for law enforcement. Through social media, people can easily attack a police officer's character. If an officer's integrity is compromised, courtroom testimony and investigations are at risk for our community. Law enforcement officers can find their honor under serious attack online at any given time. Even erroneous information can reach a significant audience to include potential jurors, possibly causing irreparable damage to officers' reputations. Regardless of the level of truth, negative comments create lasting impressions. Empowered by social media to include Nextdoor, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and other popular sites, cop baiting presents a crisis for law enforcement. Questionable videos of police officers can be financially rewarding to malefactors who file claims or lawsuits. For some individuals, a citation or jail time is worthwhile if there's a cash payoff result. The practice of cop baiting leads to officers not knowing whether they are facing a situation that is legitimate, staged, or exaggerated for someone else's benefit. I don't care how professional and hardworking our officers are, no one is safer when this is occurring in our community. My officers and I support internet activism. We support the First Amendment right to protest peacefully. What we do not support is calling in false reports to the police. Again, we support the right to peacefully protest. We work for you, the Marina community. I hope our city leaders and our communities chooses to place greater emphasis on police community partnerships and the co-production of safety. My hope is that our community continues to advocate for a better police department by focusing on engaging the community in crime prevention planning with active community involvement. Also working on improving police training, promoting our youth development, and connecting residents to resources and building personal relationships between police officers and residents. Thank you for listening to me this evening.
Thank you very much, Tina. It's great to hear the sort of on the street experiences that our police officers are having. So we appreciate that and all of the rest of your comments and input during various meetings. Okay, let's go, if we could, to Frank O'Connell and then Lisa Berkeley and other council members who have comments they wish to make. Thank you, Frank.
No, I'm fine. I was going to do it under public comment as a, non-elected official, but after hearing public comment, I'm fine with what was said. I was going to cover certain things. So, thank you.
Thank you, Frank. Yeah, I got confused in my head that you wanted to do that as public. Okay, Lisa, did you want to talk about things that?
Yeah, I've actually got a couple of things to say. And actually, before I do screen share, I would like to just thank Chief Nieto for her comment just now, because on Saturday at the Black Lives Matter movement, which was incredibly heartwarming, moving, powerful, peaceful, and phenomenally well organized and well done. I was there with Mayor Pro Tem Morton and Councilmember Urrutia. And afterwards, when the rally completed and there was a march that was about to ensue, and as the march was about to go, I walked over to the 4 police officers who were there, Marina PD, who were on duty there, away from the crowds, but just standing there incredibly peacefully and incredibly supporting the Black Lives Matter movement. And as I was standing there thanking them, a person who, as far as I know, is not a Marina resident and very innocently came and asked for a photograph with myself, my partner, and my dogs, who are all there with me, and the police. And it was a really interesting moment in time, because on one hand, I absolutely am grateful for our police department and the incredible support they've been having with the Black Lives Matter movement and everything that they were doing. On the other hand, I was acutely aware of what sometimes happen in politics when things get messy and people in this very divisive and charged area try to take photographs and then distort what's going on. And, you know, my hope, this person came and asked for a photograph with all of us, and I happily said yes, because there's nothing to hide. There's no manipulations here or anything like that, it's my hope that our members of the community, that there was no cop baiting or council member baiting or anything like that. So I just want to really publicly thank our police department for being supportive of the Black Lives Matter movement, and also thank Councilmember Urrutia and Mayor Pro Tem Morton for being with me at that event. And so I just wanted to address that. The next thing, though, if I could please do a screen share for a minute. I have permission. Okay.
Matt, I assume you're helping, or
yeah, he's got it. Here we go. Okay, so some questions have been brought up about where we're going on the Police Citizen Oversight Committee discussion in Marina that the Marina Democratic Club is hosting. And the series that we're doing on issues of racism and building trust in communities of color. So this, interestingly, our timing, the leadership within the Marina Democratic Club have actually been preparing this topic for over a year. And these are human issues. They're not political. They're about really honoring the inclusion and diversity aspect within our community. These events are open to the public, and anyone can come. We've had our first conversation with Police Chief Nieto, where she talks about what are our policies within the police department, the transformational leadership program that's going on. She addresses some of the 8 Can't Wait issues, etc. I highly encourage you to go and watch that video, and it's marinadems.org. And it's under meetings, I think is where it is. Also, there's a YouTube channel of the Marina Dems. The next event that we had was from the organization NACOL, National Association of Citizen Oversight of Law Enforcement. And we had 2 women from there who gave a presentation on the different types of Citizen Oversight Committee. We were going to have tomorrow, July 8th, originally, a 3rd conversation with Chief Police Nieto and the 2 women from NACOL, to look at what would be an appropriate, or would it be appropriate to have a citizen oversight committee in Marina. However, we've decided to postpone that because we really want to reach out to more members within the community. And so I think we're looking at the 23rd or 24th on that event. So that's that. And that's, I'm sorry, the recording of that, we've been having some technological problems. So if you're interested in getting a copy of that or notification when that second video will be put to the public arena, you can either contact me at my email address or call or text at that phone number, or the info from marinadems@gmail. And then we'll also let you know when the third event is. Okay. Now, the other thing, we were supposed to have our first meeting of Compassionate Marina on July 1st. We had to reschedule it for July 18th at 4 p.m. If you are interested in attending that, there's the email. And I think that there have been already a couple of emails, and you are not being ignored. We will be back to you shortly. We were just waiting to have a confirmed date. And that's it. So 2 things: that the public is welcome to both events. We very much want people to be involved in both of these because it really is looking at how do we continue to build our healthy city, a compassionate city in relation to race, in relation to policing, education, healthcare, etc. Okay, and that is it. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much, Lisa. Great work on all those meetings and initiatives and getting all those qualified guest speakers. All right, I wanted to say thank you to the 20 volunteers that turned out to plant over, well, about 400 plants at the Oak Woodland Volunteer Restoration Project outside of our library's playground, out in front of the library. It was a great COVID safe, where we all stayed 6 feet. Families each had their own area to plant in, and we had a lot of little ones and some older folks to supervise those little ones. And now we've had volunteers stepping forward to water all those plants. And it's a beautiful volunteer-inspired growth of an oak woodland, such that used to be around a lot of Marina. So it's paying tribute to our natural heritage, at the same time providing a wonderful outlet for reflection and engagement with our natural world that's next to the library. So thank you to everyone that joined there. They all got their own mini pizza, and they all got their own Subway sandwich, and it was just great. Thanks to Subway Sandwiches and Mountain Mike's for their donations and or discounts to make that food possible and more affordable. This Saturday, July 11th, we're going to have a cleanup of the dirt lot next to Walmart. We can only have up to a dozen volunteers. And so we're looking for a dozen volunteers to, in a COVID safe manner, help us pick up litter in that dirt lot, which is on the Del Monte Boulevard side, the east side of the Walmart parking lot. So we'll meet there at the Walmart parking lot where it hits the dirt, the east edge of that parking lot, closest to Del Monte Boulevard, at 10 a.m. this Saturday. And we'll have all these COVID safe supplies that would be needed to pick up that litter. It looks pretty bad, and we've had a lot of comment in the public, and so it's like, well, let's get after it and try to do something about that. So that's this Saturday at 10 a.m. at the Walmart parking lot. Next Monday and every Monday, we're holding town hall meetings at 6:30 p.m. to discuss, and originally it was COVID matters, but it's morphed into including Black Lives Matter issues. And recently we had a nice discussion on fireworks this last night. And so it's a kind of an unusual, informal, and somewhat vulnerable setting where everyone is welcome to say what's on their mind. And you know, we usually take about 2 to 3 hours, and you can stay as long as short as you wish. But it's a great opportunity to be heard, to learn other people's perspectives on sometimes some deep and emotional, close held to the chest issues that we don't oftentimes have a chance to talk about in the community. But it's normally a very safe space, and I hope that we continue to have these meetings, because they're wonderful experiences for me, and I get the feedback that others share that understanding. Later on in the meeting, I do want to talk about July 21st, the meeting we're going to have that Mike Owen talked about, the landmark trees and Brian's comments about smoking in the parks, what we can do about that. Alex's videos that he's proposing to get better use of AMP, Access Monterey Peninsula, our city's TV station channel, and then something about fireworks. But I'll wait for that number 12 item after we finish our business items. So yeah, thank you everyone. And we'll now go to our consent agenda. Do any members of the public wish to pull anything or ask a brief question? Let's go to Denise.
Hi, just a comment, not to pull anything. Please, we would like to continue with our little committee meetings so that we don't back up on some of the issues. Some of the issues we're dealing with are years old. And so I would be in support of having those meetings regularly, and thank you for my time to comment.
Thank you, Denise. And that regards 8F3 and 8F4, which are the budgets tonight that we'll be considering Abrams and Preston Park. And you have these Preston Park Tenant Association meetings with Councilmember Councilmember Morton and O'Connell with yourself and the president, Paula Pillow, and other tenants. So we hear you. Thank you for mentioning that. All right, we'll come back to council. Let's go to Paula before we do that.
Yeah, Bruce, it's not just the tenants, it's also the city manager, the assistant city manager, alliance representatives, and if necessary, other staff people. They're very extensive meetings, and it's my expectation that we will be continuing those. I believe assistant city manager Mogeson is setting up some dates right now for us to follow up. We've got a lot of issues to discuss, so thank you.
Thank you for the clarification, Paula. And I didn't mean to slight anyone I didn't mention. It's one of those things, you start mentioning some, and if you don't mention all, it's
yeah,
bad on you, bad on me. Thank you, Paula.
Yeah.
All right. So we'll go to the consent agenda first to ask council members if there's any brief questions or comments or wish to pull any item for more in-depth discussion.
Mr. Mayor, could we pull item 8G1 for a quick question and comment from me?
Yeah, no need to pull it. Well, let's go ahead with your quick question and or comment on 8G1.
So, Mr. Mayor, I have questions on that also, so perhaps it should be pulled.
Okay, are your questions brief or you think they'll involve some in-depth discussion, Gail?
I think we should have a discussion. That's okay. 8G1.
Okay,
we'll pull with regard to the cell tower. Thank you.
Okay. Yes, we'll pull the DX site cell tower issue. Any other comments, questions? If not, then I'll motion that we approve the consent agenda and we give kudos to all of the volunteers that may have helped, and definitely all the staff at both Alliance and the city for putting together those budgets of Preston and Abrams and everything else on our consent agenda tonight. Thank you to everyone involved, even if we don't talk about them individually. Thank you, Adam. We'll go to the public for anyone that wishes to comment on the motion. Denise Turley, go ahead.
I think that was from before her hand hasn't been down.
So Denise, we're going to let you talk if you still wanted to on this issue. You can unmute yourself, or if you don't, we'll just assume that you were there for the previous issue. Okay, Denise.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Okay, Anita Shepherd-Sharp, can we have a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember Berkeley.
Yes.
Councilmember Urrutia.
Yes.
Councilmember O'Connell.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Morton.
Yes.
Mayor Delgado.
Yes. Thank you, Anita. That motion passes unanimously. Let's go to 8G1 with first Councilmember Urrutia's question and then Mayor Pro Tem's questions.
Thank you. The last time a cell tower item came before us, I had asked if there were any opportunities for us to talk with these cell phone tower companies about putting towers on the far southern end of the city so that we don't lose cell phone reception while driving along Highway 1 through the Fort Ord area, or so that we could have better cell phone reception in the dunes, where I've had personally AT&T, Verizon, and T-Mobile, and I don't get cell phone reception in Target or anywhere in the Dune Shopping Center sufficient to hold a phone conversation. And I just wonder if city manager or whoever negotiates these leases could comment on whether or not they see an opportunity the next time one of these cell phone tower companies comes back asking for a lease extension or for a contract, to have the incentive that we ask to receive from them for extending their lease be that they improve cell phone reception in the Fort Ord area. And that's my question.
All right. Lane Long, who would you like to address that comment?
Eric Frost can address that. He handles our cell phone tower leases.
Good evening, Eric. Thank you for helping.
Sure. Council, the information or what's been happening lately when we've had cell tower negotiation discussions is that there seems to be a consolidation of the industry. And so we've had different entities come to us and ask to have reductions because they say they're going to be consolidating their cell towers rather than having more. We certainly could ask them, but there seems to be an emphasis on reducing the number of cell towers and asking for fewer. But certainly we could ask them to try to improve the coverage. The tower in question, I'm not sure which carrier it is. I'd have to go back and look. It is a company that has cell towers and then leases them to other entities. That's who is coming to us this time.
I believe it's a T-Mobile Sprint cell tower, if I remember correctly from the report.
Yeah.
The thing that just really kind of jumped out at me is that this cell tower on DX Road is like maybe as the crow flies a half a mile from the dunes and doesn't actually provide adequate cell phone reception down there. I'm personally of the opinion that if you can improve cell phone reception in Fort Ord, we should name a park after you in this city, because there are a few things that I think bother people more than not being able to use their cell phone. The staff report mentioned that cell phones are like the most widespread communication, device in the country. I think there's more cell phones than there are people. And so it's definitely very important. And as we have more homes go into the dunes and as more people abandon their landlines, we really need to do something to ensure we have adequate cell phone reception. And it'll do wonders for people who have to commute along Highway 1 for work. That's all. So please prioritize that if we can next negotiation.
All right. Thank you, Adam. Mayor Pro Tem Morton.
So I read this report several times and I was trying to make sense of it. So you included in the report, and I think probably this is question to Eric, is a grid that sets forth what the offer was in 2018. And in 2018, the offer, option one, as I read this, was that for a 40-year extension of the lease, there was going to be a signing bonus of $50,000. The current offer is 6 5-year extensions. So they have 10 years plus 30 years, still 40 years, and the offer is $5,000. Why would we do this?
The main reason is that this cell tower is on NPS land, and or that was given to the city. And one of the issues there is that it may need to be moved at some point, and we may do some development. A cell tower to relocate, if we had an agreement and we thought we had to relocate it, it could be rather expensive. I've been told it could be $100,000. By having that clause in the agreement means that they can have their cell tower, but if we need that land, we'd work with them to relocate the place, and they would. And they would pay for the relocation, which seemed to be rather an important thing for a long lease in some place that we're not sure how it will develop.
So, but at this point, to just question this back, because I understood that now they're offering at some point to move it. But in fact, if we just let the lease run out for 10 years, we get our $2,000 a month for 10 years, and then it's their responsibility to remove it at no cost to us. We're not getting anything out of this. If they want a place to have this in the city, to Councilmember Urrutia's point, is put it someplace that's effective. I just see this as a 40-year commitment and no long-term value to the city. We would have been better off taking 40 years and 50,000 bucks. I just don't see, they have to take it out at the end of 5 years, 10 years, when the lease is up, unless we give them a 5-year lease.
Well,
$5,000 is not enough to give them 40 years of use.
Well, that is certainly the judgment call that you can make. The reason we brought this forward at this time is that the whole industry is going through a consolidation effort. And in the effort of doing that, we expect that they'll set up their network, whatever it's going to be. And this is a chance to have them, they don't want to rely on cell towers that have a shorter lease as they make their network. And the one issue we have is that we don't want to make a commitment unless we know we can move it. The option certainly is out there that we could say, let's not take this and hope that we can do something better in the future. The argument against that is that the consolidation of the cell towers is happening now and people are setting their leases as opposed to the future. But both options are reasonable and you can make an argument either way.
But we also could counter for $5,000 that we're going to give you 2 5-year terms, or for $10,000 we're going to give you 2 5-year terms. I just don't understand that in 2018 it was a $50,000 signing bonus.
And and we would have to pay for any relocation.
But okay, but that's why you wouldn't do a long-term lease, is that they would have the cost of removing it.
Yeah, but part of that gets back to that is a non-conforming use under our NPS program. Anytime they could come in and say, you need to remove that tower. And so part of what we're trying to do is reach that balance to where we have a level of comfort with NPS program that if they do come in and say that tower needs to go, it can go and they will pay the cost and we'll work with them on a site to relocate versus doing a longer term lease that may put us at maybe a risk with the NPS program. So we're trying to reach that balance. We also know those towers, they can relocate to other school district property, CSU and B property. And so we're trying to keep them on that property where we can get revenue for those NPS sites, but hit the balance of, because we know it's a non-conforming use, that it gives flexibility that if they need to move, they can move. So that we're trying to hit that balance there.
So it's if they need to move or if we want them to move.
If NPS says that's a non-conforming tower, it doesn't comply with our program, it needs to come down.
Or the city
and
says.
If we do, go ahead.
It is at the city's option to ask them to move.
Okay, thank you. That's what I'm trying to clarify. And then the second thing is that if we do nothing, they're committed to payment on this lease for 10 years through 2030, correct?
Right.
Thank you.
All right. Councilmember O'Connell?
Thank you. Yeah, Lane, I did send you, I think, and also Eric questions. And one of the big questions was the National Park Service. And now you're letting me know that it is a non-conforming. So it does not grandfather in. And we're looking at a situation that we're possibly giving us a very long lease. Don't we have to somehow get approval from National Park Service, or at least get some kind of a letter from them knowing that they are aware of this extension?
What's happened so far, Councilman O'Connell, is that they've said, this is non-conforming. Where you have a lease out there, you can continue that lease. That's where they've left it. So what this would do is that if after 10 years, and they have a right for 10 years, if we went back to National Park Service and said, no, you really need to move it, we'd move it at that time.
So, not to beat a dead horse, have we notified the National Park Service of this agenda item that's on tonight?
No, we don't have to. And like our other leases with them, we do not need their approval of those leases, like Water City Roller Hockey, the other sites. We don't need their approval of those leases. We just know that it's a non-conforming use.
I know we don't, from what you're saying, we don't have to, but I'm a little concerned that we still should. Just so we don't get down the road and they say, why didn't you notify us? We have a history somewhat with the National Park Service of things being put on the back burner, or they're not willing to assist us due to some history of the city not doing what they think is appropriate. I don't really see the harm in letting them know it. I do see a harm if we don't let them know it. Potential harm.
Well, we felt with this one, the existing lease they know about is through 2030. And so this lease gets us through 2030. And if we tell them they have to move at their cost.
Okay. Thank you.
And thank you, Frank. Councilmember Morton?
But this lease adds 30 years to that. It's at the cell tower's discretion. So it's 40 years. It's not 10 years. So first of all, 40 years. And I have sat in meetings with our Recreation and Cultural Services Director, our previous development director, with the National Park Service representative, David Siegenthaler, who's saying that we couldn't have long-term leases for concessions. And I do have a great deal of concern. And for $5,000 to take on this issue seems silly. Why can't we just leave it as is for 10 years? And if the power company is interested, they need to make it worth our while, and we should run it by the National Park Service for anything of this duration. 40 years is a long time. That's long enough for people to have children and have grandchildren. A
Might
lifetime.
not be here.
Yeah. Anyway.
Gail, would you like to make a motion, or Frank, or anyone else?
Can I
go to
ask
public
one
comment?
more question?
Sure, go ahead, Lane.
Eric, my understanding was, Eric can clarify this, the reason that they came to us is because of, as these consolidation that he's talking about, and their investments that they're trying to do to that cell tower, in that we may lose them to put the investments that they needed into the cell tower. They want a longer term lease. And if they don't get a longer term lease, were they going to be looking for another site, or potentially just pulling off that site?
I have talked to a lot of cell tower people that want to come in here, and I'm not sure what's going on. What's happening in the industry is that they are consolidating their towers. They're trying to keep some sort of portfolio of towers that they will use to supply the network. They are very into this tower because you saw they offered $50,000, and I told them the council's willing to let this roll, and we'll talk after the 10 years. But they're the ones that tried to come up with something that would be acceptable to council to go further. I think that there may be room to go back and ask for more money if that was the issue up front. But I think they're trying to get a portfolio they'll use for a longer period of time. I guess in they tell me, now I can't say how much is truth or just negotiating strategies. They tell me that what they're trying to do is to have their portfolio, and whatever that portfolio is, they'll use that to build out their network and try to lease those to the larger cell tower carriers.
So I actually have a question on what you just said. Actually, you just
Go
said,
ahead.
thank you. You said that you've been in contact with many different cell phone carriers. Do I understand that correctly?
We have a number of cell towers in the city, and a number have come to us and asked for extensions. We've talked with council several times, and in the end, we've decided we didn't want to do an extension that meant we'd have a reduction in lease revenue. That's what they've been mainly asking for.
Okay, that was my question. Is there a way to really be sure that we can optimize the income or revenue from the different carriers? So, okay, thank you. So I hear you're looking at that then. It's part of the matrix. Thank you.
Okay, would anyone like to make a motion, and then we'll go to public comment?
So I would make the motion that we have staff look into this further as to optimizing the revenue from the use of the cell tower and what is the shortest duration of lease terms, and also to run it by the National Park Service.
I'll second. Lane or Eric, do you see any downsides to not optimizing the dollar revenue, but the shortest duration lease, and discussing or advising the National Park Service of what we're up to?
We can work with that direction.
Okay. All right. Councilmember O'Connell.
Yes. Is it possible for a friendly amendment to address Councilmember Ureta's concerns about reception at the locations? In other words, if it's not going to be extra revenue, if there was some way of addressing the problem to eliminate it.
Yeah, if it was more effective, I will take that as an amendment, is that we want it to be effective coverage for the footprint of former Fort Ord, the city of Marina. Yes, absolutely. That amendment, with the second hold, Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, second holds. So to staff, is there any relationship between this motion and getting better coverage at the dunes? Do we have any leverage to accomplish the latter?
I can find out.
So, Mr. Mayor, if I can just ask a follow-up, wouldn't it be prudent to ask them what area this tower services? Who do they think is their coverage, their area of coverage? And if they don't do the area of coverage that we want, why wouldn't we look to a different cell tower and offer the premises for lease for some other company that would service our geographic area? So I think that is part of what your discussion is you only want to lease this land, especially for any duration of time of long period, if it's effective to make sure we have phone service in our city. And that's what I understood from Frank's friendly amendment and Councilmember Urrutia's comments to start this issue.
Okay, yes. To Lane and Eric, to follow up with what Mayor Pro Tem is saying, it seems like a fairly time-consuming project to outreach to the various cell tower vendors, providers that Eric is engaged with on occasion, and have discussions with them, showing them a map, let's say, of our gap of coverage, and to be talking to them about what we can do to cover that gap, and then for us to figure out how we can use the leverage of desire to be at the equestrian center or the airport with our desire to expand coverage at the dunes. I think it's probably a lot more important than the money. So it's such a large project that I just don't see it as something that Eric can also do, and amidst all the rest of his things. And it seems like a priority project that we need to consider going after in a successful way, which was not just a collateral duty, but a kind of a special project. Lane or Eric, can you comment on that?
Well, I think what's happening in the industry is that there's going to be a consolidation of cell towers. We're not going to, I don't think the industry is going to build more cell towers. I think what they're going to do is look at the cell towers that exist, and they'll be using fewer of them. So I don't know if we'll have much leverage in trying to have them locate and build another one. What they're trying to do is take the cell towers that are most useful out there and retain those and they're doing that as a trade-off of cost and let go of other ones. I think that's what the industry is doing.
So if you ask the industry reps to put up a cell tower that would cover their existing and the gap, and we had an attractive package financially to go along with that, might we be better suited? Might we be more successful getting the coverage at the dunes versus just continuing the way we've been, where there's no incentive for them to go to the dunes, apparently?
Well, I don't know, Mayor. I think that they'll put up a cell tower when they have enough subscribers that use it. And certainly over time, there'll be more houses out there. So it'll be, if the cell tower coverage is needed, you'd hope they'd put up the cell tower. But I just know in general, they're trying to reduce the number of cell towers. For example, we have 2 cell towers at City Hall. One isn't active. One has been abandoned because there's been the consolidation out there.
Right. So I'm thinking, for example, the stockade. It's a little bit closer to the dunes. 1 for 1, is there rationale to move from the equestrian center to the stockade if it helps cover the gap? But we're not thinking in those lines because the cell tower vendors are not thinking in those lines because they have a lot of cities that they deal with, and we're just looking out for ourselves. So it just seems like we heard enough from council and we hear enough from the public that this is a convenient time tonight to ask the question, is there a way we can approach this cell tower and other cell tower leases to try to move toward filling the gap?
Well, let us go try.
All right. And is it something that is not a special project that you can handle as a collateral duty? Or do we need to council to understand that something else has to drop to pick this up and get it done?
Well, I think the conversation, I can certainly do that. If it becomes larger, then I should probably report back to you what I find out. But if it becomes larger, sure, maybe it makes more sense to get someone that can help us do that.
All right. So I think the council would be happy if you spent a couple to a few hours and then came back to us with what you found, so we know how unlikely it is to make progress, or maybe we see some hope when we hear back from you. All right. Would someone like to make a motion, and then we'll go to public comment?
Motion was made, I think.
Yeah. Have a motion.
Oh, that's right. That's right. The
You
second
seconded.
holds. Yeah. All right. Let's go to Paula and then Brian.
Are you able to hear me?
Yes. Good evening. Welcome
Okay.
back.
So what I wanted to say is this has been an issue out here. Like, I've lived here since 1997, had a cell phone. For the longest time, the issue was literally coming down what is now MGM at around Marina Heights Drive. The cell phone coverage would just flat out go out. And that related to some equipment that was out at the airport that was taken down, and our cell phone coverage was restored down here. The Highway 1 corridor, just so you know, it's not about, how do I delicately say this? The military has certain research and operations that occur that impact the cell phone reception. So you can put a lot of other cell phone towers out there. That's not going to fix that problem. So who you need to be speaking with are the DOD and possibly Homeland Security, and find out what is the get around for that, if there is a get around, because it's always going to be a problem. You can keep putting cell phone towers up. I've talked to Verizon, I've talked to a number of other carriers, and clearly that is really what the problem is. And so that needs to be looked at in tandem with any exploration of additional cell phone towers. Thank you.
Thank you, Paula. Let's go to Brian.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. In short, I support Mayor Pro Tem Morton's motion with Mr. O'Connell's thoughtful amendment. But I have to say, it's been kind of fun to listen to everyone talk about this highly technical topic from folks that frankly probably don't have a lot of highly technical expertise in the subject. And that includes myself, for the record. I mean, I'm probably maybe a little bit more versed than some, but yeah, I will say this. If you're even vaguely familiar with the industry, you'll know that all carriers tout their coverage maps to provide complete end-to-end coverage. And it's been kind of interesting to listen to this discussion. But one thing I can assure you that they're not going to do, any provider, is allow for a complete coverage void area. They want more than anything to have that complete end-to-end coverage. Not only because they want to serve the residents of Marina, but they want to serve the hundreds of thousands of people that drive through our city annually. So I hope that this motion passes, the city will sit down with not only the tower salespeople, but also the geeks, if you will, who are the tower engineers that really truly understand this stuff from a technical perspective. The second thing I want to mention is I heard no discussion about 5G micro cell tower sites. This is truly a game-changing technology that is coming, and it's coming quickly. It may, in fact, likely will eventually replace the traditional cell towers you're talking about altogether. These are small micro cell tower sites that will likely be on every street on things like utility poles. They will be much more numerous and provide a much more coverage. Again, the technology is going to change everything. You've been hearing about it for years. It's finally coming. It's coming quickly. So I think the council probably needs to really understand this technology in order to make decisions about a lease for 30 or 40 years. But I do support Mayor Pro Tem Morton's motion, and I hope any discussion that you have with the cell companies is fruitful and involves the right people so that you get a real understanding of what the future holds. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Greg Fury, go ahead, please.
Yeah, I also support the motions that were made, and I also wanted to add on to Paula Pelot's comments. When I first moved here back in '98, I often had to respond to emergency calls down the one corridor, and I would say that I probably made no fewer than 20 phone calls to Verizon and 20 phone calls to AT&T, depending on when I had those carriers, for the blackout spot that occurs on Highway 1 by Light Fighter Drive over a period of it seems to vary a bit, but it's about a mile span where your calls go dead. And each time it was kind of got to be bemusing, because each time I would call, the person on the other end of the line would say, "Really? That's the first time we've heard about this." Now, I don't know if that was just bad communications or that was the party line, but whoever is involved with that, and in fact, if it is the military, whatever technologies are being used, I hope that flaw or fly in the ointment will get resolved at some point. I continue to have disconnects every time I go through that area when I'm on the phone, and I don't think it matters what carrier it is. So I wish you luck and thank you.
Thank you, Greg. Don Hofer. Good evening, Don.
Good evening, Mayor and members of the council. I appreciated the conversation tonight and just figured I'd put my hand up to let you know that MCP would be willing to help out in the discussion. One of the things to consider is that American Tower is a cell tower developer, and they sell space on their towers to the various cell providers. And so location is very important to them. When they go to cell phone providers like AT&T or Verizon, the virtues of their site lend themselves to the marketability of that site to these providers. And the blackout spot we've talked about on Highway 1 is an important consideration. We know because we've gone out and looked at the issue quite extensively, and we know that the cell phone providers are aware of that issue and would like to fix it. I think one of the issues with the site that you're considering tonight is that it doesn't provide a full solution for the blackout on Highway 1. And so in terms of value to the cell providers, it's a little bit compromised, and they're not willing to necessarily fully invest in putting facilities on that tower. We've looked at putting a tower within the dunes or somewhere, within the dunes specific plan. It's always sort of this combination of when you draw a circle around the tower, how much of the market area do you capture? The Highway 1 corridor is an important part of that, and so they're very interested in a tower closer to the freeway. In our discussions that we've had, the other important considerations, of course, are things like proximity to infrastructure for that tower. And that's always been a bit of a challenge within the former Fort Ord because of the quality of infrastructure the Army left us all with, of course. But all of this hopefully helps you to inform your decision tonight. We'd support, a delay. If you'd like us to work with staff in more detail, we'd love to do that. And lastly, one other thing to consider is height limitations. As we get closer to the freeway, there are some height limitations. Some of that is part of zoning code that the city controls. And so, that could be an additional consideration to pay relative to this issue that might provide a longer term solution that would help all these issues. So to the degree that either Doug or myself can be of assistance to Fred or staff, just let us know. We'd be very happy to participate in the conversation.
Thank you very much, Don. Sounds like you're an early stop in our education, both for us on the council and staff. Thank you. Appreciate your input. Okay, let's go back to City Council. And if we could have a roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Berkeley,
Yes.
Councilmember Urrutia,
Yes.
Councilmember O'Connell,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Morton,
Yes.
Mayor Delgado.
Yes. All right. Thank you for that. It passes unanimously. Let's move on to consider the Preston Park new property management company, Greystar Real Estate Partners. Lane, were you going to lead us in this?
Matt's going to cover this, and we have Kristen Torres from Alliance.
I was wondering who Kristen was. Hello, Kristen. Thanks for being here with us. Go ahead, Matt.
Sure. So my introduction is very short. I just mainly wanted to introduce Kristen Torrance. She's the district manager for Alliance Residential and now Greystar Real Estate Partners. As you're aware now, on June 1st, Greystar purchased Alliance and took everybody by surprise with that. So Kristen has a little bit of information, and I'll invite her to provide that to you.
Hello, everyone.
Hello, Kristen. Good evening.
Yes, on June 1st, Greystar did acquire Alliance. Can you hear me all right?
Yes, perfect.
Okay. Greystar and Alliance have been highly ranked property management firms for many years. Alliance has been recognized as a leading developer for multifamily properties. For Alliance, this transaction will enable the company to focus on development and investment management while the ongoing management of operations is transitioned smoothly to Greystar. And from the Greystar perspective, the acquisition of Alliance will add 120 new clients to their 470 clients and add 535 communities to the 1,800 communities under management. The first 60 to 90 days is really dedicated to transition to the Alliance staff members to Greystar, new hire paperwork, benefit enrollment, offer letters, so on and so forth. And during this time, we're keeping business as usual. The next period will be the integration stage, which will be 6 to 12 months. we'll be working with someone on the transition team as we start utilizing Greystar's brand. Really at the site level, we don't expect many changes. The site teams will remain the same. Our regional senior leadership team will remain the same. The changes will more likely be within our corporate office as our support teams enforce this together.
Excuse me, Kristen. You started out strong and now you're a little bit hard to hear.
Okay. So I was just saying right now we're really in the transition stage where we're getting all associates on board in terms of new hire paperwork, benefit enrollment, so on and so forth. Following this 60 to 90-day period starting around September, we'll begin with the integration phase when we start to use Greystar's brand. But again, really at the site level, the team is the same, the leadership team will remain the same. It's more as our corporate offices join together, some of the support teams may see some changes, but at the site level and in terms of our relationship with the city, we don't expect any changes.
All right. Thank you very much, Kristen. Any questions for staff or Kristen at this time? And let's go then to, sorry for this, Councilmember Morton.
Thank you. So just a question for staff, and having worked with Kristen in the committee and looking at the budget, two things. One, you indicated to Kristen that you're not going to use the Greystar logo branding. You use the word branding until perhaps November. And raised in our budget discussion, thank you, Denise Turley, was making sure that none of the transition costs for new uniforms, new logo, letterhead, et cetera, is put into our city budget, but absorbed by the corporation. So we want to be sure that that is taken care of. And my question to our Assistant City Manager, Mr. Mogensen, is that when is our contract up? It's an annual contract renewed annually with Alliance, now Greystar. What is the date when that would be renewed? And that's the first question. And the second question is that oftentimes the contract renewal comes to us in council after the deadline. And so we're ratifying something that pre-existed. And would it be prudent for us to make sure that that contract is reviewed by staff and then by council well in advance of the renewal date, as it's a new party? So those are two questions. Perhaps you're nodding your head, but the public needs to hear. Thank you.
Sure. Yes. Thank you, Ms. Mayor Pro Tem. And the contract will expire on December 31st of this year. And you're correct that, we do need to look at this ahead of time. Should there be anything different that we want to look at in the contract itself, think about different options. So in August, we planned on coming back to the council to discuss some of the performance management measures that in the past we've talked about, wanting to review ahead of time as well. So we figured if we start that process in August, we'll be giving ourselves kind of a good, headway into the contract renewal. So that's the plan right now.
Perfect, thank you. And then, Kristen, I did see you nodding your head about making sure that our city wasn't absorbing the cost of the changeover in management branding.
Absolutely, yes. The corporation will be absorbing that.
Thank you.
All right, Kristen, thank you for the introduction you provided tonight and being here to answer any questions. Let's go to the public where we do have Denise. Go ahead, Denise.
Thank you. My big question is, since we stopped.
Excuse me, Denise. You're a little bit choppy and staticky. Just to let you know.
Understood.
Maybe we need a new cell tower near you.
I'm 2 blocks from you. how are we going to let residents know ahead of time what's going on, since we've stopped passing emails on through the system, partly because of policy and partly because the office does not have everyone's email.
Okay, Denise, did you have anything else? And we'll answer that question as soon as public comment's over. All right.
That's my question. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Denise. And thanks for all your work on the Tenants Association. Anybody else wishing to speak to this motion, this issue? All right, we'll close public comment. Kristen, how do you expect to accomplish resident outreach, and what's your email strategy going to be?
We'll continue to send messaging to residents through email, through posting letters on doors, as well as through posting information in the monthly newsletter.
And is there much visitation to the bulletin boards in the streets?
It's not our most effective means of communication. I think the letters that we post on doors and the email tends to work the best. So again, the newsletter is meant to build a sense of community with events and different information, but any operational changes along with any other important information would be emailed and then posted on doors.
All right. And as far as tenants meetings or new policies or things that you think are important to advise residents about, maybe fireworks or whatever else is the issue of the week, has Greystar anywhere within their region ever used organized texting softwares?
Yes. Yeah, that is an option that is used. I've seen other systems utilize. There's one called Active Building that's more or less it texts residents. It also is a board where it's a forum that people can post information about things going on in the community, or just questions for management or questions for other residents. So there's a number of different options that we could look at.
All right. Yeah, I would appreciate it if the meetings that you have with city representatives and tenant representatives talked about that, because I think that would maybe reach some of the younger people that don't pay as much attention to the mail as traditional groups of folks. Okay, Councilmember O'Connell.
Thank you, Kristen. When will you stop accepting payments to Alliance and require that to be made payable to the new company?
Rent payments will remain the same. Residents write their checks out to Preston Park or Abrams Park. So that portion won't be changed due to the acquisition.
So you just simply make the payments to Preston Park?
Correct.
Oh, great. Thank you.
All right. Again, thank you, Kristen, for joining us tonight. And we look forward to a great relationship with Greystar and the city and everyone living out there.
Thank you.
All right. You're welcome. Let's go then to the resident satisfaction survey. And who will lead us through this, Lane? You're muted.
Eric will lead us through that one again.
All right. Thank you, Eric.
Matt, if you bring up the PowerPoint, please.
1 second. I'll set when you are.
Okay, why don't you start the PowerPoint? Council in a land far, far away, a time long, long ago, like February, we did a we had a resident satisfaction survey that we worked on. And so much has changed, but we're bringing this back to you to let you know. The survey was originally designed by a city intern, Mackenzie Boone Morton, and brought there. It was designed to maybe be the first of many surveys who try to track over time resident satisfaction with city services to understand what was important. And it was trying to ask people that maybe do not typically participate. And so it was conducted at Mountain Mike's Pizza, Grocery Outlet, and Lucky Supermarket. It was done over 2 weeks in early February. We had at least 2 volunteers during the 40 hours we took surveys, and we got back 136 surveys. I can tell you that the survey had a couple shortcomings that I think we'll work with, and I think if you hear them, you'll at least be able to keep that in mind as you look at the information. One was that the demographics of the people we ended up surveying tended to be a little older than census data. One is that and the other was that they tend to be, our survey respondents were less Hispanic and less Asian than the last census, and that there were fewer fewer adults with families or with children than generally in the survey. And because we had 136 surveys, we had maybe an error rate that's a little higher than we wanted. At a 90% confidence interval, you'd expect to be up to 8% plus or minus on every survey, which means 90% of the time we'd expect the real reaction to be within 8% of the number we put out there. But with those fallbacks, let's look a little closer at them. Next slide, please. Here's the census on age groups compared to the survey. And you can see here where we had older people and we had less younger people. And so that's where we had probably the biggest change in the age distribution. The census also had 67% households without children. Our survey had 75% of the households without children, which makes sense. If you have older respondents, they tend to not to have children there. But it was still within, I guess it's 8% within the error rate. That's what happened. Next slide. On the demographics, our survey was a little light on Hispanic respondents and Asian respondents. We had more other people that didn't classify in one of these categories, but that's the 2 areas where we were a little bit low. We had, but otherwise it tended to show the city. Next slide. So all those things I think are just understanding some of the challenges of taking the survey, but after we had 80 hours of people working the tables or more, we said, well, this is what we have. So let's look at what the community said. If you look, one of the first questions we asked is, how do you rate the city's effort in providing a safe community? And 75% of the respondents said excellent and good. And though only 1.6% said it was poor or very poor. So in general, this group of individuals felt safe in the community. That was good. Next slide, please. A number of residents were asked, have you had a contact with the police department? If they did, we asked them to rate the service. And this is how they rated the service if they had some contact. About a little less than 2/3 rated as excellent to good. 11% said poor and very poor. Now this is just any contact with the police department that they had, but the majority clearly said it was excellent or good. What's interesting is we then had a question later in the survey we asked about emergency services. Next slide, please. In this, it was saying, how was police emergency response? 85% said it was excellent to good, and 4.7 said it was poor or very poor. So at least when they see it's emergency, they think it's real good. We're asking to come in for other types of services, and I can imagine what they are. You know, I have to fix a tail light, or I have to pay a parking ticket or something. I maybe am not too happy about that. But the emergency response was given a good rating. Next slide. Another question that was asked was saying, how safe do you feel walking in your neighborhood or in the retail areas, and then also by day or by night? And you can see here that people generally felt the best walking their own neighborhood by day. They felt about the same in retail areas. And then it would drop off 20 points or so whenever it became nighttime about feeling safe. So that is kind of consistent, but it just tells what people feel like. Next slide. We had similar questions about the fire department. The fire department was asked if you've had a service contact with the fire department, well, how good was the service? Here, almost 90% said it was excellent or good, and there was 3.4% said that it was poor or very poor. So there were 29 of the 136 surveys we took that had a contact with the fire department. We also asked a question about their emergency response. Next slide, please. And that's going backwards. There we go. And on that, it rose a little bit to 95% said it was excellent or good, and only 2% said it was poor. So generally, the fire department's emergency response is viewed very well. So next slide. We had some questions about community life and what facilities they use. We were asked people about how often you go to the library, how often you go downtown, how often you use trails, teen center, community center, or parks. Clearly, the facility that's used the most in the city is going downtown. Nearly 40% of all the respondents said they come 2 or 3 times a week at least. The least used facility was the teen center, and that makes sense. People, if you don't have children, you're not going to the teen center. But it was interesting to see where people were going. Parks also rated pretty highly. Next slide, please. Also, they were asked, well, how do you feel about Marina as a place to live or raise kids or work, retire, or visit? The highest ratings went to living and raising kids with above 80%. The only one that dropped down to 2/3 was visit, but these are still pretty high rates on being excellent or good place for all those issues. The very poor were pretty small ratings, as you can see. Next slide. We asked the respondents to tell us, besides police and fire, what is the most important service the city provides? And then we put this into word cloud. What this really meant is any word that was repeated again and again would be larger, and words that were repeated less often were smaller. And then the computer gives us this picture of a word cloud. The number one word that seemed to come out of people's mouths was community. Park and rec was high, water was high. Remember, this is in February. But also you'll see out there, you'll see ambulance, you'll see some library or housing. But these are the thoughts that people gave back to us, saying park and rec, community, water, ambulance are very important. Next slide. So then we asked them to talk about specific services and to make the graph a little less busy. What we try to do is just give you the good and excellent on this chart, and I'll show you one that shows the poor and very poor response in each of these. The two services that they rated as the highest are actually not city-provided service, but are ones that provide the community, are water and ambulance, gaining almost 80% or better on those two. You can see the one that's probably on the low end is city road maintenance. There was concern. And the good news about that is the city has said we're going to make a real effort to kind of address road maintenance. So let's look at the flip side of this at poor and very poor. Next slide, please. What was expected was city road maintenance, and that is what came out as being that. One that surprised me a little bit was I thought traffic management might be higher, but it was community services for seniors had one of the lower ratings in areas that people thought we should do. Maybe a reflection of this particular group, which tended to be a little older, but that's what the ratings came back for the whole group. Next slide. The end the discussion, we asked individuals, if there's one thing the city should focus on, what should we focus on? And the interesting word that came back most often was more. But then after that, you can see roads, streets, parks, activities, and then to a smaller extent, jobs, work, repair. We took all those answers too, and in the report, you can see unvarnished what people mentioned that was on their minds. And those things came up. But the one that was probably the big focus is that this group said the city should be focusing on roads and streets. So council, that's the information that came back. I think hopefully it squares with what your perceptions of the community are. And certainly there would be some new items that would show up if we did it today. But that's the value if you go through and you do this each year and maybe add in a couple topical questions, but at least you have a baseline to start seeing how people respond. One of the things that we did learn out of this is if we did it again, we'd probably try to help increase our Asian and Hispanic responses. Maybe we try to do some surveys in front of ethnic grocery stores that might have more populations in our Hispanic or Asian community. And if we wanted to get some younger respondents, we might want to try to consider doing something after COVID-19 was over at a soccer event or something. In any case, this is a start, and this is information. Be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Eric, can you go to your first slide, or at least the slide that had the age groups participating in the survey? Is there a legal reason why we didn't ask folks under 18 to get the youth perspective?
No. Well, I guess the issue is that they need to have, there may be issues with getting released from your parents if you're going to fill out a survey. That might be the issues. But okay. Beyond that, we certainly could. We just didn't want to, there was one complication we didn't want to address at the time.
Eric, I also think it's probably related to the fact of where we're set up as at grocery stores primarily, and you would typically not see that younger age demographic shopping at grocery stores. I think that's more a reflection of the location of the surveys.
We talked about multiple ways of doing this, Mayor. You know, one idea that was brought up is that we certainly could make this available on the internet. We could create this into a survey monkey and it could be taken throughout the year. We could try to target different groups. Maybe we do something at the teen center and people would come in and do that if that's what you wanted to do. The reason why we wanted to have at least this is that as opposed to people self-selecting and saying, I want to take the survey, these are individuals that were not expected to be, they were maybe the people that don't normally respond. And so that was why we tried this method.
Okay, well, very valuable information. Thanks to everyone involved with it. And maybe in the future we could figure out a legal appropriate way to focus on the high school at lunchtime, or focus on the teen center before school, or focus on places where we have a lot of young children under 10. There's got to be kid-friendly surveys that would give us information too. But thank you very much for that presentation and all the work that went into it. Other questions before we go to the public? All right, let's go to the public. Anyone wish to speak on this survey result? Okay, let's come back to the council. Councilmember O'Connell. I think you're muted, Frank.
I just want to extend a thank you to Mayor Pro Tem Morton's daughter for her effort. Please let her know the council greatly appreciates it.
Yes, great. Thank you, Frank. All right, let's move on to Community Schools and Community First Initiative. We'll turn it over to Councilmember Urrutia.
Mr. Mayor, do we need a motion on that one? The item calls for adopting a resolution.
Yes, can you make that motion, please?
Yeah, I move that we adopt a resolution to receive the resident satisfaction survey report for 2020.
Second.
Okay. All right. Can we get a roll call, please, Anita?
Councilmember Berkeley,
Yes.
Councilmember Urrutia,
Yes.
Councilmember O'Connell,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Morton,
Yes.
Mayor Delgado.
Yes. All right, thank you. Please continue, Adam.
Thank you. Just starting out, I believe that what I am presenting tonight is the first step in the two-step process. Is that correct, Lane?
Yeah, I think it depends. This issue had been raised before with the council, and we could either just depends on the direction that you're wanting to receive. If we're just wanting support of the council for this, I think they can give their support tonight. If they want a more in-depth review and study, then we can do it the first step of a two-step process and get more in-depth information.
Okay, wonderful. I'll proceed. So what I propose is that Marina join a very large and growing list of groups, individuals, local agency bodies, nonprofits, you name it, that have officially endorsed Proposition 15, which is otherwise known as the Schools and Communities First Initiative, Commercial Property Tax Split Roll, Prop 13 Reform, or the Tax on Commercial and Industrial Properties for Education and Local Government Funding Initiative. That's what the Secretary of State's office calls. Just to give you a quick kind of glimpse at who has already endorsed this: the California State PTA, Community College League of California, the Nonprofit Housing Alliance of Northern California, the California Teachers Association, California Community Foundation, the Chan Zuckerberg Initiative, the California Democratic Party, Equality California, Sierra Club, Joe Biden, Bernie Sanders, Mark Stone, our own Erie Anderson, who's our MPC trustee, Wendy Root Askew, our MPUSD trustee, PK Diffenbaugh, the MPUSD superintendent, and many others. So what I believe we need to do is address a lot of problems that we're having right now. I think really, rather than trying to say what is a problem, it's kind of better question to say what isn't a problem right now. If you look at the state of California, the state's facing a $54 billion deficit in 2020. The Department of Finance has said that next year we'll be adding $8 billion to that. And in the following year, we'll be adding $18 billion to that. So there's clearly a problem with funding of city, county, school services in the state of California caused by the COVID-19 pandemic. But if you go beyond that, we've had issues with school funding for years that haven't been addressed. The state has always had to borrow from schools, and the sort of growing backlog of money that the state owes to schools has resulted in California having some of the lowest per pupil spending in the country. You look at our own city, we are facing cuts. We've weathered it better than others because our citizens have voted for local taxes, but across the board, cities, counties, school districts are looking at major cuts due to a decline in local tax revenue, and many are spending down their reserves in this year, leaving little money to address the funding shortfalls that are certain to come in 2021 and 2022. Also, during the pandemic, schools are being asked to reopen on a limited basis, and parents are being asked to return to work. And people are contacting me, I assume they're contacting you, hoping that local governments can provide some sort of solution for the new problem that we are really facing, which is childcare. And of course, there's very little funding to pay for childcare with government-funded programs. So this begs the question, where are we going to find solutions for these problems? And I believe Prop 15 is a solution to that problem. So what does Prop 15 do? Prop 15 reclaims $12 billion per year for K-12 schools, community colleges, and local communities. There's a formula that says out of the $12 billion, 40% will go directly to schools, 60% goes towards cities, counties, and special districts. What it does is it closes commercial property tax loopholes that corporations and wealthy investors use to avoid paying their fair share of property taxes. It also protects all homeowners and renters by maintaining tax protections for all residential properties. So when this campaign comes out, this Prop 15 is going to be the boogeyman. Everyone's going to say it's going to take away your Prop 13 protections and your property taxes are going to go up on your home. And nothing could be further from the truth, because within Prop 15, it is explicitly spelled out that this will not affect residential property taxes. It also gives small businesses tax breaks to help revive our local economy, to help hire back workers so that they can grow. And it ensures strict accountability so that money goes directly to our schools and communities. So what is Prop 15? It is commercial and industrial property tax reform. It reassesses commercial and industrial properties at today's valuation. When voters passed Prop 13 in 1978, they did so because they wanted to protect residential property from increasing property taxes. But commercial and industrial properties have actually reaped the greatest rewards. For example, when Prop 13 was passed in 1978, commercial properties paid 60% of the total property tax collected in the state. Residential paid 40%. Today, that ratio has actually flipped, where residential property is paying 60% and commercial property is paying 40%. This is because residential properties change hands frequently and get reassessed, whereas commercial property trades hands less frequently. And also there are a lot of loopholes within Prop 13 that allow commercial property to not be reassessed. For example, if 50% ownership doesn't transfer to one individual. So there's loopholes that will be closed by Prop 15. I think Prop 15 is going to be great. And here's why I think we really should get behind this and put our stamp on it. So like I said, Prop 15 is going to generate approximately $12 billion a year. It goes directly to school districts and to cities, counties, and special districts. A USC study estimated that Monterey County will reclaim approximately $216 million a year for our schools, the county, cities, and special districts. And a study that was commissioned by the Schools and Communities First campaign estimates that the city of Marina will receive approximately $2 million per year. Prop 15 is also good for small businesses. We don't have to worry that Prop 15 is going to, put our local small businesses out of business, because 84% of the commercial property in the state of California is valued at less than $3 million. $3 million is the threshold at which properties would get reassessed. So for the vast majority of businesses in the city of Marina, they will still be protected under Prop 13. 92% of all the funds that are going to be recovered under Prop 15 come from just 10% of like massive commercial property owners. Sort of the biggest payers would be companies like Chevron, Walmart, McDonald's. Prop 15 also exempts small businesses from paying all taxes on tangible personal property, and would allow non-small businesses to exempt up to $500,000 in tangible personal property from their taxation. So this is really meant to be a stimulus bill for small businesses, and have large businesses pay, with very expensive real estate, pay their fair share. Prop 15 is going to level the playing field. So I'm going to use this as an example. If somebody wanted to open up a shopping center today that was identical in every way to one of our big box retailers in Marina, they would have to pay approximately $230,000 per year in property taxes, not to the city, to the county. It gets divvied up. But the existing retailer that exists today in Marina only pays approximately $110,000. So both retailers have the same exact impact on the city in terms of car trips, the amount of sales tax they would generate to the city, calls for police, calls for fire. But one business is going to generate twice as much property tax to the city than the other. Or another way to look at it is it's going to cost them twice as much as the other to pay their property tax when they have the exact same business. So I think Prop 15 is really about making taxes in California fair for all businesses so that new businesses are not disadvantaged. So why should we endorse it? When we discussed our budget in June, we talked about our 2020 deficit, but also the assumed deficits in 2021 and 2022. And we made some decisions about when we might hire certain key staffing positions, and that was based on whether or not Prop 15 passes. And I believe it's necessary for us as a city to signal to the residents of the city that we want this to pass, that these taxes are not going to be collected on our city's residents, but they are going to greatly benefit our city's residents. In the past, we've asked our city's residents to tax themselves to provide city services, and I think we want to do everything in our power to ensure that we can provide them with the services they invested in now, even with the funding shortfalls created by COVID-19, but also send the message that we aren't going to only go back to the well of our citizens with regressive taxes like sales tax and gas tax to solve the things that they said they want, like parks and recreation, fire protection, and road maintenance. I think also this is going to bring in much needed revenue to help us recover from the COVID-19 pandemic now. The revenues would start coming in 2021. But what I really want to do is encourage you all to think about what we'd be able to do with the ongoing revenue stream of $2 million per year. When we passed measures N and P, we provide our city with approximately $2 million per year, and that's allowed us to take steps to expand our fire department, create the road maintenance program that's going to transform our city's streets. So what would we be able to do with this new revenue stream once COVID-19 is over? Would this allow us to build out our second fire engine company completely? Could we construct that swim center that everybody wants really bad? I think the answer is yes. Also, could this provide us and neighboring cities with the funds we need to create a countywide mobile crisis team modeled after Cahoots, the Cahoots program in Eugene? I think the answer to that is also yes. And so by adding our name as an endorser, we're signaling to our residents that we are serious about providing them with the services that they want, with really the only method on the table right now to create the revenue stream to do that. And so I think being able to talk to our residents about this and say, yes, your city wants to provide you guys with these things, and we are putting our name on the dotted line as a supporter, would be signaling to folks that they should also vote for this, and that they shouldn't fall for the false information that's going to be out there saying that this Prop 13 reform is targeted at residential properties, but is only really targeted at very, very high value commercial properties. So that is my pitch.
Great pitch, Adam. I would suggest that if there were no council objections, that we have such a letter of support, even if on our consent agenda or some future agenda. But let's first go to Councilmember Berkeley.
Yes, so I'm just looking it up quickly, and it looks like a really excellent ballot measure. And certainly there are a lot of excellent organizations in support of it, including, though, I see, Adam, that the SEIU, of whom you were the political coordinator with, is also the second highest supporter of it, with a total of $3.52 million being given to it, 3.5 in cash contributions, and then 19.5 in kind contributions, which is excellent. I completely get it. But I would ask that when we do vote on this, I would ask that you abstain, just for like high level integrity. I would like to be able to read through this more here, because I think it's excellent, but I'd really like us to be very clear what it is that we are putting our city's name for. I mean, certainly to your point, Adam, all of the officials and parties and organizations, including SEIU, of whom I support the work you're doing, you know, are good organizations. But I just want us to be, as a government, as an leadership in the city, I really prefer us to be really transparent with where we come at on this. And so that's my comment. To your point, Bruce, I mean, everything that I've skimmed through thus far, like I said, I'm in favor of it, but I'd like to continue this conversation, not necessarily having staff do a full report on this, but that we have time to really read through it, because I wanted to hear everything you said, and then I'd also like time to read it. So I don't know if that's a step 2 of this, or step 1A and step 1B, but yeah, I'd like us to move forward. I would just like time to read through it thoroughly.
Okay. Yeah, perhaps staff can put it on the agenda with available information, pros and cons, and then we could have the public and the council read that, prepare for our public meeting. Bob Rathie, can you opine on the appropriateness for Councilmember Yaruta to vote with the rest of us or abstain?
Well, I don't believe Councilmember Urrutia has a financial interest, but I don't know this. I haven't spoken to him about it, so I'm only speculating here, Mr. Mayor.
I don't. I work for a nonprofit, so
I understand.
yeah.
And I don't believe that there would be a common law conflict of interest in that unless he owns a business that would be subject to the reassessment if this measure were to pass. And again, I don't know that because I haven't spoken to him. But hearing his responses to the negative in both those cases, I don't believe that he would have a financial interest or a common law conflict were he to vote on the measure.
Okay, so it would be left up to Adam to decide how he felt on it, and whatever he decides would be fully legal.
Based on my limited investigation of this matter, which has lasted about the length of Councilmember Urrutia's presentation, I believe that's the case.
All right, let's go to Councilmember O'Connell.
However, I do need to preface my remarks by, and this is just, it's probably inapplicable in this case, but my advice regarding financial conflicts of interest and the need to recuse should not be taken as definitive. Only the FPPC can give that advice in writing.
Thank you, Bob. Thank you. Okay, go ahead, Frank.
Thank you. Adam, is it your understanding if this were to pass that for example, Walmart would be reassessed for purpose of establishing taxes, although there was no change in ownership?
Walmart is an example of a property that would be reassessed. Earlier today, I reviewed their property tax assessment on our assessor's website. And what I saw was that the property was constructed in 1993. And so they are currently paying property taxes on what they purchased the property for. I think they constructed it in 1993, but the assessed value in 1993 escalated at 2% per year. And the property is currently valued at or assessed at nearly $23 million. So I believe they assessed the value in 1993 at $6.5 million. So if you assume a 2% escalator, they're paying property tax on an assessed value of a little over $11 million. And the property's current assessed value is over twice that amount.
So it would be reassessed even though there's no change in ownership, no construction or anything?
Yeah, that would be what Prop 15 does, is for commercial properties valued at over $3 million, it reassesses them at today's value.
And that would be for large apartment complexes in Marina as well, if they exceeded that amount?
So residential properties are exempt. However, apartment complexes may be counted as commercial properties. And so if they were valued at over $3 million, then they would be reassessed.
And of course, if they were sold, then it'd be reassessed based on the sales price.
Yeah, what typically happens when properties like that are sold is they take advantage of the tax loopholes that say if no one entity takes on 50% ownership, it doesn't get reassessed. And so like a real typical ploy and something that Prop 15 closes as a loophole is, let's say Frank and I are buddies and we want to go buy an apartment complex. But if we decide to split it 50-50, the property gets reassessed. So Frank and I would create a shell company that would purchase 2% of it. Frank buys 49%, I buy 49%, it doesn't get reassessed. So there's like all kinds of shady things like that that go down, which is why, you know, like skyscrapers never get reassessed, even though they change hands all the time. So yeah, so there's a lot of stuff that we need to address that address the fairness issue of the fact that when I bought my house in 2011, the property was reassessed. But when somebody buys something as a partnership, it doesn't get reassessed. And so
does it cover agricultural? I'm sorry.
Well, I was going to say that's why you've seen that reversal in terms of the share of who pays
40-60. Yeah. Does it cover agricultural property if it's worth more than $3 million?
So agricultural property is exempt along with residential property. So all properties, residential and agriculture are exempt, and all commercial and industrial properties valued at under $3 million are also exempt.
Thank you. I'm in favor of following the path that Councilman Berkeley said, but I definitely, from what I've been hearing, I'm definitely in favor of this.
Yeah, me too.
Okay, Councilmember Morton.
So yes, that's the point, is to bring it back for step 2. Does that need a motion, or do we just, since we've all in agreement, is that sufficient?
Can I ask a question of clarification on that though? Because Lane, when Adam asked about doing a step 2, Lane said having to do a full staff report. And I mean, I think we're all in a kind of in a favor, or leaning for it already, for sure, I think. So I don't want to burden staff with more. Is there a way that we can do this without?
I have a proposal.
So I'm not expecting staff to do an analysis. I think that you laid it out that they would give us the citation to the actual language for us to review, and any other ballot arguments for or against, and let us read it. I mean, it's a 1 page.
Exactly. Our 2-step process is when council hears something, if they want more in-depth information, and give direction to staff to go put together a full staff report, but we have a general consensus from the council, put it on the agenda next time. We'll put it on the agenda next time with the information, and council can vote on it.
And Mr. City Manager and Council, I believe that in the past, we've also had a practice where the council person who placed the measure on for the 1 step has prepared like a short statement of why it's on there, and that's brought forward at the 2-step process.
Okay, Councilmember Urrutia.
So along with this proposal, I have a model ordinance that is being adopted by cities and school boards across the state. So if it would work for everybody, I could put together a packet that included the full ballot language and the pros and cons as put together by the League of Women Voters. They've done an analysis of this measure, so you can sort of see both. I don't believe there are ballot arguments in favor or against yet. As you know, that stuff kind of comes in like August once the election is scheduled. But we do have the League of Women Voters analysis, so I could include that along. So the full language, League of Women Voters analysis, and the model resolution that I would propose we pass. Would that be sufficient for everybody?
Yeah, so if there's no council objection, we'll have Lane and Adam work together on putting together a packet, but it's Lane's final decision what goes in the packet.
And can we also have City Attorney Bob Rathie review it too, so that we're very much in favor that the ballot measure is well written, so we don't have any hiccups after the fact?
Right. Well, to the extent that we have any control over the ballot measure language, that's appropriate for Lane and Bob to make sure that what comes to council has gotten both of their approvals.
Right.
We may want to have a draft letter as well, Mr. Mayor.
If this matter is already on the ballot as Prop 13, it's been 15 rather, and it's been assigned a title, there would be very little input for us as far as the legality of the measure.
Yeah.
Yeah, a draft letter, you know, if it's proposed that cities send in letters of support, as Councilmember O'Connell suggested, having a draft letter ready for us to say, yeah, let's send it, that would be good to include in the packet. Don't you think, Adam?
Certainly, and I can include that in the materials I prepare. So would this come back on the next council meeting on the 21st?
Yes.
All right, that gives me 2 weeks to procrastinate. No, actually, when do I need to get things into Shep?
Well, I think you need to communicate with Lane, you know, within the next few days, so that you guys have a roadmap, and then
Okay.
you get it to Shep when Lane tells you it needs to, when you have that roadmap discussion.
Sounds great.
Yeah. If we can just talk sometime before Friday this week.
Okay, will do. I'll make myself very available.
Great.
Okay, Monterey County Mayors Association is coming up this Friday. So we're going to go to council and staff opportunity to ask questions, clarifications, make brief reports. I heard earlier today, so some of my questions are coming from public comment. Lane, can the July 21st meeting that we're going to have, which I guess is going to include something about the Beach Road eucalyptus matter, is there some way we can get ahead of that issue so that council is not pressed to make a last minute decision on what we think should happen there?
Yes, I'll review that with Brian, and we'll see if there's a need to have that approved by the 21st. And if there's no pressing need, I think we've got clear direction from the council. We'll put it on the August meeting so you can have plenty of time to review the arborist report and all the different information associated with that.
Right. I was thinking if it was on the July 21st, as long as we didn't have to give a final decision. So July 21st, we could all be educated with the public. We could give direction to staff. And then, in August, whatever needed to happen. So I'm not against having on July 21st. I just would rather not have a last minute decision being, we got to do it tonight because next week they have to do X. And if we can avoid that pinch, that would be great. Okay. The smoking in the parks, Lane, you heard Brian talking about we could do better at prohibiting smoking of all types going on the parks. What would be your take on that?
That was something Councilmember Urrutia has brought up before, and it's just a matter of getting direction to put on our work program and how we want to look at doing that.
Okay, and I bring it up not because I want the city to jump on every one of these issues because our plates are only so overfilled already, but I just wanted to hear what you just said. I'm not asking that to be a high priority to start working on immediately. I just wanted to have that bit of discussion, let others decide what they want to make any comment on it or not. And then on the videos, Alex obviously was soliciting a payment for a task, but I think the task that he had outlined, when I talked to him in private, it was like $3,000 for a month trial to see what he could give us as far as more Access Monterey Peninsula outreach. And so I don't know where to go with that because it was an unsolicited offer that includes payment for a service. So what is your initial thought on that?
Yeah, we have zero bandwidth to do that.
Right. Okay. All right. And the only other thing I had from public comment was fireworks. And in the town hall last night, Doug McCallan was great to be with us and share some of the thoughts he had. And we heard again tonight, or at least an email, getting a vault so that public safety could actually confiscate. Right now, they can't confiscate illegal fireworks if they were to come across them. So having some kind of movement toward getting a vault and some kind of a strategy to do nothing or to do something to reduce illegal fireworks, that I think that would follow a public discussion. So, maybe October, November, December, probably October, November, we can talk about fireworks and what we want to do because January 1st would be a dry run, the next a holiday when we're going to have a lot more of these complaints. Not as much as July, but still it's the second biggest day. So what is your thoughts on what's your thought on what we should do, if anything, on the whole firework issue?
We've talked it over internally, and I've assigned Chief Nieto and Chief McCowan to work together to see if there are some solutions that we can think of internally, and some are potentially some creative solutions. Chief Nieto is already talking with the other police chiefs in the area, and Chief McCowan's doing the same thing with fire chiefs, and we agree that we need to talk about and see if there's some solutions that we can come up with. And so we already internally are kind of working on that, and that time frame may work out fine to come back in November, December, and have at least we can have some ideas from the staff and then have a discussion with the public and the council.
Okay. And thank you, Lane, for joining us on last night's town hall. And I put you on the spot then. And I wanted to follow up. The Recreation Cultural Services Commission, what's the status of them? overseeing the Martin Luther King art process.
Yeah, I haven't talked with anyone on the commission yet. We're still kind of talking over internally. I haven't been able to reach out to Dr. Marino yet this week, but we'll be doing that very soon.
Okay, and I don't mean to imply that's at the top of your list. I just wanted to know, because there's been, you know, it's in the discussion of the public right now. The last thing I want to say is about me. There were a few people that commented they were offended. Those are my words. They had different words, I think. They were offended that I took pictures that the media used. I had pictures taken that were used for the media to be in the County Weekly for an article about the Martin Luther King statue. And whether that was appropriate or not, I want to make sure everyone knew sort of the backstory, if you will. I rode my bike out there. I had a yellow vest on. I got there early at the airport. I went to the Martin Luther King bust. I was walking around appreciating the memory of the bust being there. Now it's just a cracked, falling apart sort of block of concrete that used to support the bus. So I jumped up on it and sat there looking out and appreciating the landscape from a nice view on top of that concrete block. And the County Weekly came and I said, you want me to stay here? You want me to take pictures? They, well, let's take a pictures there first. So they took a few pictures, and they had me stand against the monument. And so the picture they chose happened to be one of me sitting on the monument. I'm sorry if anybody was offended. I was just waiting to meet my appointment, not thinking about whether it was appropriate or not for me to sit on a concrete block that had 10 years ago had this, you know, beautiful piece of artwork. So I thank people for their public comment, and I'll remember that. Anybody else? Go to Councilmember Urrutia and then Mayor Pro Tem Morton.
But just a really quick update on the long-awaited or not so long-awaited various tobacco ordinances that I had talked about bringing forward. One is a tobacco retail license, one is smoke-free parks, and one is smoke-free multifamily housing. I haven't brought them forward just because in talking with city staff, you know, we'd have to run them through a whole bunch of various committees, and we have so many different things that have popped up on our plate ever since we initially discussed that I would bring them forward as a two-step process. So I haven't done that. Of course, I'm still interested in smoke-free parks and tobacco retail licenses. That retail license pays for like the decoy program, so we can really stop kids from smoking by stopping them from being able to buy tobacco. So I would like to bring those forward at another date, but the reason why I haven't brought them forward so far is just because I feel like it would be subjecting staff to a lot of work at a time when we have so many other things on our plates. But those issues are still on my plate, just not bringing them forward yet.
All right. Thank you, Adam. I think that's any need for proclamation of local emergency update, Lane?
No, nothing at this time.
Okay, we're going to adjourn.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes,
yeah,
go ahead.
We still have closed session. We still have closed session.
I know. So we're going to adjourn to finish our closed session. Bob, is that the right way to state it?
Yes, we're going to, well, we're not really adjourning the open meeting yet. I can come back and make an announcement after the closed session. So we could leave the open meeting open at this point, and then we will recess, I guess would be the term, to the closed session. And then when we don't need to reconvene an open session, I'll just make an announcement for anybody who's still there.
Okay, so we are going to reconvene in closed session momentarily. Go ahead, Lane.
Correct.
And to get into this, back into this open meeting, I had to close our closed session. I was hoping I could keep it open. So as I go back, I'm going to try to reopen it. If I can't, I will send a new closed session link to everyone. So if you're not able to get into it, check your email and I'll send a new link to you.
Okay.
Thank you to the public. We have 9 folks still with